concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah, a rhino.
Okay.
I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds, away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. The sun is up. It's not quite as lovely and bright as it was yesterday. The sunrise started very well, but it now seems to have sort of disappeared a bit behind some clouds. So it might be a little bit chilly this morning. It might be a little bit less than warm and welcoming. But nevertheless, we're coming up to a bank holiday weekend, so you can know for sure that one thing that's going to happen is that it will indeed probably rain at some point or other over the course of the next few days. However, don't worry, because Theo Usherwood is here. Very good morning to you, Theo. We are going to be running through all the big stories in the papers this morning, and of course one of them is that the whole EU deal, which was signed off and delivered by Keir Starmer just a couple of days ago, appears to be unravelling already. It looks as though Brussels asking for now dependents to be able to come with the youth experience. So when they bring all these young people here from various points, far east, north, south and west, they're going to be bringing dependents with them. So the Labour government at the moment say, oh no, that's definitely not happening. That will be happening, I can assure you. That's the problem, first of all. We've also got Keir Starmer yesterday in Parliament ducking questions on exactly how much money it's actually going to cost this country to kind of effectively rejoin the European Union. Of course, many of the ministers of the state have been at pains to point out that really, don't worry about it, this is not really a rejoining scenario, this is just a resetting of our agreements with the European Union. Well, I'm afraid it is absolutely not right. The front page of the Daily Mail has got Starmer's Britain is a police state. Boris Johnson says that, thanks to the fact that Lucy Connolly, the woman who's locked up for a tweet for 31 months, was refused yesterday her appeal and refused any kind of chance of becoming reunited with her family, including her 12-year-old daughter, because she's such a terrible criminal that she must be locked up for the rest of time. Absolutely extraordinary. Angela Rayner, meanwhile, wants to tax you if you've got any savings, if you've got any money at all, if you run a company, if you've got any kind of dividends that you pay yourself. She wants to come after you. Pensioners on the Daily Express front page have been dragged into a higher tax rate. And the Sun have got the great story of the day. We are now paying for an asylum-seeking dog to be put up in a kennel here in this country. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Welcome back to Morning Glory. I am, of course, Mike Graham, and this is the home of Common Sense, and we will be with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. Theo, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Mike. Great
Shall
to
we
be here.
start with the barking mad story on the front page of the Sun? Because it really is quite a remarkable story, isn't it?
It's incredible. This dog, German Shepherd, and the Sun have done, it's a very funny mock-up they've done, because they've kind of put one of those sort of blackouts.
I love the fact that they've
like
blocked out the
as
dog's
if it's
eyes.
some sort of, you know, cannot be identified.
Yeah.
I think it's just some random German Shepherd. But the German Shepherd crossed the English Channel in a dinghy with illegal migrants, got to Dover, and then it's been sent to quarantine, where it's going to have to stay for at least 4 months while its owner is believed to be in a hotel. I mean, why the... it beggars belief. You'd think that it'd just go to some sort of pet rescue centre, and then it can. I think
you
bring a
think
dog
so.
here, then you just give the dog to somebody. I think you should lose your dog.
Yeah.
If you come here with your dog, and you come here...
This is the ludicrous nature of what we're dealing with now in this day and age. There will be people, you know, from government departments going, oh, well, you know, you've got to look after the dog. You know, the dog has been brought here under false pretences. You know, the dog didn't know he was coming across the channel. Dog needs to be looked after by somebody. So we'll just have to pay for it. Yeah, no. Why don't you have it send the dog back? Yeah,
send dog back, or just rehome it.
Yeah.
I think it should be... What's going to happen, of course, is that this is going to be, you know, touted around the north coast of France, that you can bring your pets with you.
Yeah.
And people are going to come over now.
And that'll be a reason to stay, because I can't be sent back because I've got my pet here. I've got to look after my dog.
It's got to be in quarantine.
Yeah. The right to a family life with a dog.
But I think you should lose your right to have a dog or a cat. I don't know, do people want to bring in their budgerigars? They're going to come over and...
Tortoise, bear, you know, who knows what they're going to bring.
Whatever you can get in a dinghy.
But it's kind of, I mean, what it illustrates is the ludicrous nature of our asylum system, doesn't it? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. Because meanwhile, while we're sort of having a laugh about the dog, and there's a great page inside on the dog actually sitting on what looks like an asylum-seeking hotel bed, you know, the truth of the matter is that the person that brought the dog is also here being paid for at our expense.
Yes,
as are thousands of these people who are coming every single day.
I don't know how much quarantine is. It's not cheap.
No.
And of course, it's going to have to be there for 4 months while it's in quarantine.
When I moved back from America with my then wife, which was a very, very long time ago, and my very young daughter, we had a cat. And the cat had to be put in quarantine in Dover, funnily enough, because there's quite a lot of quarantine places around the country, but most of them are near sort of ports, right, or near airports. And I think the cat had to be in quarantine for about 6 months. Never recovered the cat, really, but it was bloody expensive. We used to go and visit it. Yeah. You know, people take all this stuff quite seriously, but we shouldn't be boarding dogs. This is madness.
It's in the Animal Inn in Deal, 5 miles from Dover.
That might be where we had the cat, actually. Deal, it's not far away.
Dogs. The Sun has sent a reporter down there. Dogs were heard barking yesterday, which a worker did not think.
Dogs were heard barking.
Well, you would think so. It's a dog, but the worker did not think the crossing canine was among them. So but it's presumably at some point it's going to be reunited with its owner, and then we're going to have to, and then you, the taxpayer, is going to have to pay for this animal to be. And
presumably they'll then say, well, of course, you know, he can't share any accommodation in a multiple occupancy home, so we'll have to give him a home of his own, so him and the dog can live happily ever after. That's ridiculous. The whole thing is bonkers. I mean, the other story that kind of ties into it, page 7 of the Daily Mail this morning, the asylum seeker kingpin who came here from Egypt, basically. He's a guy called Ahmed Abid. Masterminded boat crossings carrying nearly 3,800 people from Libya to Europe over the course of the last couple of years. He came here himself on a small boat and then set up a business in London, basically making sure that loads more people could come with him. And thankfully, he's finally been captured, and they've actually sentenced him to 25 years in prison, which is great. But the part that really will wind everybody up is that he was arrested at his taxpayer-funded home in London because we were paying for his house where he was living and making £12 million from this asylum racket.
It's a flat in the Isleworth area where he claimed asylum in 2022, despite being... This is the thing also, Mike. You know, despite being a convicted drug smuggler who served a 6-year sentence for attempting to smuggle a ton of cannabis into Italy. We don't know who these people are.
No.
So if you're crossing the channel illegally and they're throwing their passports over the side, when they initially arrive in this country, we have no idea who these individuals are.
And this is one of the things...
and they're just out.
And this is supposedly one of the things that a new, closer alignment with the EU will bring us. But it actually won't, because even when we were still in the European Union, the people who shared the Schengen Agreement sort of countries didn't share their police records with people with countries who were outside of Schengen. So the UK actually was never given priority by the European Union to be able to share very, very important kind of, data on criminals who were travelling across the continent with, malice aforethought. Yeah. And so we'll still be outside of that because now, of course, we're not in it anyway.
Yeah, and this isn't some sort of average Joe criminal, or pickpocket, or does a bit of shoplifting. This is a man who organised 7 crossings involving nearly 4,000 migrants packed into overcrowded.
All of whom paid thousands of pounds for the privilege, right?
Described in court as death traps. He sourced the boats and crews from as far away as Sierra Leone, gave technical advice and helped to house the migrants. His gang deliberately, this is in the Mail, alerted the Coast Guard as soon as the boats were in Italian waters, making distress calls so passengers could be taken ashore as the vessels were too big to
And it's got to be said that probably one of the main reasons why he's actually been captured and, in fact, prosecuted is down to Italian investigations rather than any investigations being done in this country. And so it's actually going to safeguard Italy more than it's going to safeguard us. So we've done Italy's dirty work for them, but it seems that we cannot... I mean, this is the first person, to my knowledge, who's actually been prosecuted for this.
Yes, I mean it's
been going on for 5-6 years,
and it's one individual, but this is the right way to go.
Yeah,
but it is only one individual, and the other problem with smash the gangs, because you could see a number 10, somebody in number 10 in the press office going, yes, the gang's been smashed.
Yeah, we can say we've smashed the gang.
We've smashed the gang. Is that who's going to replace this guy?
Yeah, right. There will be somebody else
because. And ultimately, and this is what, people who've worked on the front line, people like Tony Smith, all those people who've worked down for Border Force on the north coast of France and right across the continent and have always said, is that what needs to happen, you can smash the gangs, but another gang members, another gang is going to...
There's plenty of them.
And there's plenty of them, and there's no shortage.
This guy's not doing it on his own, is he?
As long as there is a supply of people who want to come to Europe and ultimately to Britain, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And what needs to happen, and this is... what was so embarrassing for the Prime Minister last week when he went to Albania, is you need to be able to have a message to those people who are going to the gang members saying, look, I really want to get to in England and I'm going to pay you however many £1,000 to sit in a dinghy and risk my life to do so, is to actually, so that person understands that if they're willing to risk their life, it will all turn out to be for naught, because they're going to be sent, very likely be sent to a detention centre in the
and they won't be able to live
with
here.
That demand.
But that's the thing.
You
have to deal with it, because this won't stop anybody coming. The fact that basically, one kingpin has been arrested and taken to court and charged and sent to prison for 25 years, that will not stop people coming today. It will not stop people coming tomorrow. It will not stop people coming next week, because they'll go, well, that's just, par for the course, isn't it?
Not when they read the front page of the Sun either.
No, exactly right. Let's get a voice note from Andy about Lucy Connolly.
Do you know, I'm absolutely livid this morning hearing that about poor old Lucy Connolly's appeal being pretty much thrown out yesterday. It really does annoy me, Mike. It makes my blood boil. Especially when you've got people like Hugh Edwards and stuff avoiding prison, paedophiles and sex monsters and stuff. I mean, what can you do against that sort of stupidity? I feel really bad for Lucy and her family. And, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of it, but I do hope she gets out soon. It's absolutely shocking. It really is. Anyway, cheers, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the one bright note, I suppose, in the whole Lucy Connolly saga, which is an awful, appalling, terrible story of a woman who made one mistake and has been punished completely, utterly over the top by this government, partly because, I believe, she was convinced by her own lawyer that she should plead guilty to quite a serious charge, because he convinced her if she did that, she would get a more lenient sentence, which is normally what happens. But, of course, that's not what happened in this case. But I'm told, listening to a lot of the coverage yesterday here on Talk, that she's probably going to be let out in August, which is not that far away. She'll have then done 40% of her 31-month sentence. But, the ludicrous nature of the crime business and the justice system, and I was listening to this being dissected by a barrister yesterday, is that the appeal process is very sort of selective. It's very specific, and you have to appeal on certain grounds. And because she appealed on various grounds that they didn't think were admissible, that was why the sentence was kicked out, because they said, look, your appeal doesn't stand up on various grounds that you're appealing it on as a matter of law. What they didn't do was take into account that the previous judge who sentenced her to 31 months might have actually got it wrong and might have, instead of taking into account mitigation, that she was a mother and that she was a carer for her husband who's, you know, got cancer and all of that. You know, they didn't take any of that into account because they were obviously instructed to prosecute her to, you know, the fullest extent of the law, which is what they did. And yes, she could have been sentenced to that for a serious crime of incitement to violence. But what she should have done was not plead guilty, and then she'd probably been out and on bail and waiting for the trial.
Yeah, and the Mail have done this very well. Page 6 of the Mail.
Yeah.
They've gone through just to your correspondent's voice note there that's sent in. You know, they've just gone through. He mentioned, of course, Hugh Edwards.
Yeah.
6-month suspended sentence for sharing, making indecent images of children, some of which were in the most serious category. You then got this Abu Wadi chap, this Palestinian who allegedly called for the slaughter of Jews and posted hate speech, attempting...
And also entered the country illegally.
Entered the country 9 months in prison. David Engelby rioted close to the Southport's mosque days after he hurled stones at police and chanted anti-Islamic slogans. He only got 28 months, a lesser sentence. Yeah. You've got Haris Ghaffar, took part in the riots last summer, part of a balaclava-clad gang that tried to storm a pub in Birmingham. 20 months, a lesser sentence. Yeah. And people need, your listeners need, everybody needs to have faith in the justice system, right? It's there. It is, justice is blind. It doesn't look at any particular circumstances. It's not biased. It's completely...
It should be without any kind of bias. It should be completely impartial, and it should not be a two-tier system when it clearly is a two-tier system.
You look at this, and you can't come to any... You know, in this regard, you can't come to any particular... Yes, what she... Nobody's... Even her husband is saying, Ray Connolly is saying, nobody's excusing it. Right. The point is it's 31 months, and all of the individuals I've just mentioned got a lesser sentence.
Got a lesser sentence.
And if you want to get into the argument about a deterrent that needs to be made, that was made. Yeah. Right? She went to...
I think she will have learned her lesson.
And as we discussed a few months ago, and I remember you saying, I think you put it really eloquently, actually, enough. Yeah. Done. Exactly. We're not in that situation now. So
and she served time, and I'm sure she'll never do it again. She's not a danger to society. They're talking. I mean, there's another story this morning about a £700 million programme that the government is about to embark upon from the Ministry of Justice to let out as many as maybe, you know, thousands and thousands of people on electronic tags, right? Many of whom have committed domestic abuse, many of whom have committed sex offences, many of whom are what you might consider a danger to the public. Yeah. But they're going to be let out into the streets, whereas Lucy Connolly is not. And it seems incredulous to me.
And if you're struggling for prison places, and you can't get prison places, then you need to free up prison places and ensure that the dangerous criminals, the people who are actually a threat, the people who you do not want to meet as you walk down the high street or
as you're making your way home one night from the pub.
You need to make sure those people are behind bars to keep us all safe.
Absolutely right. And the Mail, of course, have gone the other way as well. They've spoken to Boris Johnson, who said last night he believes Keir Starmer is turning Britain into a police state. And an awful lot of people feel that is the way that it's going. He basically said the country is losing its reputation for free speech. And one of the things that I found extraordinary yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, was Keir Starmer out on his rounds, and we'll play a couple of clips from what he was doing yesterday. He was out telling everybody that the bills are coming down and jobs are going up and all of this nonsense that he keeps sort of, you know, committing himself to, which isn't true. He was asked about Lucy Connolly, right? And so I was watching it on Sky News, and he said, "I'm not across the details of that case." To which I thought, how on earth can you even have the balls to say that? It's just incredible. Have we got that clip? Let's have a look at it.
He should be across the details.
Well, of course he's across it. He's just lying. I mean, this is a guy who absolutely talks about far-right thuggery. You know, Lucy Connolly was one of the major high-profile cases at the time, last summer, right? Let's have a look at what he had to say.
I'm not across the details of the particular case, but let me give you the principles that I would apply. Firstly, I'm strongly in favour of free speech. We've had free speech in this country for a very, very long time, and we protect it fiercely. I'm equally, though, against incitement to violence against other people. That has long been an offence in our country, and rightly so. And so I say, don't know the details of this case, but free speech, yes. Incitement to violence, no.
I don't know the details of this case. I mean, Lucy Connolly has been a massive story, right? Alison Pearson from The Telegraph has interviewed her in prison, has had a whole campaign going to get her freed, basically. There's been, you know, crowdfunding going on. There was a big case in the High Court, in the Appeal Court yesterday. You know, the idea that he doesn't know the details of the case is frankly insulting.
And he knew he was going to be, and he knows that he's going to be asked a question about it because it's leading all the bulletins. So to say that he doesn't know the case, and of course he is the former director of public prosecutions.
Yeah, it's absolute BS. I'm sorry.
And the important point politically in all of this, and what's damaging here is the front page of the Mail. Boris, Starmer's Britain is turning into a police state. Is that it creates this pressure. People are really unhappy about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not fair.
And it's not fair. And
it's really not fair.
I think it's very, just to this country more than any other country, a British sense of fair play.
Yes, exactly
isn't
right.
It's
un-British, isn't it?
You know, there's everything in this, you know, this country has many problems and many faults, but one of the things I love about it is we have a real sense of like, what's fair,
what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah,
and this is wrong. There's no question about it. Everybody can see it and everybody knows it. And for Keir Starmer to avoid the question by pretending he doesn't know about the case, I mean, do me a small favour. We've got much more to do. It's 6:21. Theo Usherwood is here. We've got some great messages coming in. Why isn't Gary Lineker being investigated and visited by the police for the tweet he reposted, says Footsie. Well, the police have said that they've had a number of complaints about the tweet that he posted. I'm not in favour of investigating or locking people up for tweeting, to be honest. But yeah, he will be possibly investigated, they say, but they haven't quite committed themselves to it yet. Morning, Mike and Theo. Listening to the list of names Theo read out, the common denominator is they are all men. Is it because Lucy Connolly is a woman that she's been made an example of? I don't know. But certainly that shouldn't be the case, and she should be treated just as everybody else is. But we'll come back to that in a moment. This is Morning Glory. Back after this.
Just to let you know, we've got the breaking news regarding Lucy Connolly, and it is bad news from the Court of Appeal. Lucy Connolly, the wife of a Conservative councillor and a childminder, a mother of one, has had her bid to appeal her 31-month prison sentence for inciting racial hatred online after the Southport attacks dismissed at the Court of Appeal. Hasn't even been allowed any weekend release to see her daughter and her husband, for whom she was a carer, at all. Absolutely, I mean, absolutely shocking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense. And you want to be here from now until 10 o'clock every single weekday morning, because we will bring you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You won't hear it anywhere else. And I was saying just before the show started that the EU deal that's been done, which is far from a complete deal, Theo, is already beginning to sort of unravel, isn't it? Because you've got The Sun this morning on page 2 saying that this youth dependency scheme, or the youth experience scheme, as they like to call it, is already going to now appear to be open to these people to bring dependence into the country. Government so far denying that that's true, but you can see it happening, because it seems to me that an awful lot of what they introduced to us in terms of the new deal with the EU has got all sorts of, you know, sort of clauses in it which will make everything a lot more close to the EU, if you like. You know, so what they're announcing is just the beginning, really.
Yes, it's just the beginning. I mean, I was having a cup of coffee with somebody yesterday who's is providing some advice to the government about this type of thing, and their advice was, you know, the government just need to go the whole hog. Yeah. That Keir Starmer is going to face accusations from Nigel Farage and from Kemi Badenoch of undoing Brexit. So why not? Rather than just
betrayal and all the rest of it,
as they see it, and all the rest of it. So don't tinker around the edges. Just do the whole thing. Yeah. Hook, line, and sinker. Just go for it. And that's their advice. And the other thing to remember is that, you know, Monday was portrayed as with a great fanfare, that this is a deal, it's signed, it's all done and dusted. It isn't.
No, it's really very far from that.
It's very, very far from that. Yeah. They're basically, and the problem is that what you're going to have is you had the headline announcement, the handshakes, and the warm press conference with Ursula von der Leyen and Keir Starmer. But actually now we're going to get is the detail as this is hammered out. And we received assurances. There were assurances from ministers yesterday, as one of the Ministers of Industry was touring the studios, Sarah Jones, insisting that dependents weren't going to be allowed to come to this country from the European Union.
Denying that it was true.
Not going to happen. We're not going to allow it to happen. Clearly, that's going to be a key part of the EU's demand. A cap, we were looking at a cap of 100,000. Do we think we're going to, if you think that the starting point when it came to fishing rights was 4 years and we ended up with 12, do we really think that if we start with 100,000, that's going to be how many?
That sounds like, you might not remember this because you may not be as old as I am, well I know you're not, back in the day when Tony Blair decided to allow a load of Polish people to come to this country when he was
2005,
in charge.
I remember
2005. And do you remember how many he said would come?
It was in the sort of tens of thousands.
It was 15,000, right?
Yeah.
And do you remember how many did come?
A million.
A million, right? Now that is about as bad an underestimate as Labour are doing right now.
And do you know why? And do you know why we ended up in that situation?
Because we didn't have enough people in this country who could do the jobs that the Polish people were coming to do.
No, because the Germans clocked what was going to happen. They worked out that the European Union, in somewhere like Poland, wages are really low, and then in countries like Germany and Britain and France, you have wages which are much, much higher, and if you have people who can move between the two, then they can move between the two freely and send the money back. So what the Germans did was they were smart. They were smarter than Tony Blair and Peter Mandelson, and they put a 7-year limit. And they said, OK, Poland can join the EU now, but Polish people can't come to Germany for 7 years because we know what's going to happen. They're going to flood our labour market, force down wages, and we're going to end up with a massive problem. So what happened?
They all came
here to this country.
Right, OK, I didn't know that. That is interesting. And this is the trouble, because, if you don't watch your back in these negotiations, and Keir Starmer has got no idea of how to do that, because he's been taken for a long ride, I think, by Ursula von der Leyen, who's literally running rings around him, and just saying, do this, do that. He went for, they wanted 4 years of fishing rights, he gave them 12. They wanted, some freedom of movement for young people. He's given the young people up to the age of 35, which they weren't asking for.
We were told 30 originally.
Yeah,
I know. 18 to 30, and now suddenly it's just. But we're just talking about under 18 to 35.
But these are not youths. These are not people. Let's have a look at what he actually said yesterday in Parliament on the EU deal.
Does it drive down bills? Does it drive up jobs? Does it strengthen our borders? And in each case, the answer is resoundingly yes. These deals release us from the tired arguments of the past and, as an independent sovereign nation, allow us to seize the opportunities of the future. A clear message sent across the globe that Britain is back on the world stage. That is what these deals represent, a signal that we're back on the world stage, a global champion of free trade, playing our historic role on European security, but above all, making deals that put money in the pockets of working people. Because, Mr. Speaker, that is what independent sovereign nations do.
Putting money in the pockets of working people. He's not putting money in the pockets of working people. Nobody in this country feels better off. You know, he was raving on about this when he went to Aldi yesterday as well. We'll play this clip in a little while. Talking about, you know, bringing your bills down, putting money in your pocket. It's all very well. You can say it, but it's not happening. It's pie in the sky. BS, I'm afraid.
And of course, they point to, Labour point to, who's welcomed this, in terms of the CBI and the Federation of Small Business. Of course they did.
They've all welcomed it because they all wanted us to stay in the European Union.
Because we've got a situation now where we've got 1 million young people who can't get a job at the moment.
Yeah.
I speak to some, you work, I work all over the place, as you know, and I speak to young people. It's really tough out there to get a job.
Right.
And what's going to happen is that if you suddenly say to you can import, Spain has got youth unemployment, 20, 25, it's 27%.
It's 27%, yeah.
27%, right? What's going to happen? They're going to come to this country. It's going to make it harder, and it's going to force down wages. Yeah. I don't want the country just to be churned into a giant pret-a-manger.
No.
Thanks very much.
No, exactly.
I want the young people in this country who are at the moment on benefits at home. They're not being trained up for a job. They're not getting out there and getting into the workplace. I want them to start working. I'm sure your listeners would agree.
Sure.
Those are the ones who we need to be focusing on and getting them off, getting them out there and getting them the experience they need.
Anecdotally, what we're getting, and I hear this from people every single day, not just on this station here, but just talking to people, that if their kids can afford to go abroad, even if it's to go on a sort of travelling holiday stroke working visit to somewhere like Thailand or Australia or Europe or America, they're doing it.
Yeah.
So they're actually leaving. They're creating a brain drain because people can't afford to stay here if they can't work.
Yeah, I was speaking, and it's not. I was speaking to somebody, where else I work. they spend 2/3 of their income on 2/3 of their disposable income. That's after tax on rent and bills, and they're just sitting there. They're sitting there in their one-bed flat, arms folded, just thinking, should we just go to Dubai?
Yeah.
And they're really clever and they're really bright and they've got a huge amount to offer this country, and yet we're not figuring out a way that they can actually do better, earn more. And there's a front page
and all we get is Keir Starmer saying we're putting money back in the pockets of working people. Well, you're not. It's rubbish. It's complete and utter bollocks, frankly. I'm going to say it because you can. 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning.
And then you come to the front page of the Daily Telegraph, and you've got Rayner's secret plans to tax savers, and we've lost this idea, which is that nobody at the moment is ever talking about in government, and this is something that I find quite sad. Nobody is talking about actually people wanting to have their taxes cut at some point in the future. Okay, let's play along. I know you're going to throw the stapler at me in a minute, but just play along for a second. That actually, okay, you can. There's a £22 billion black hole. We need to fix the country.
Yeah, but
I don't throw the stapler at my head. I'll take it. But actually, I want a government at the end of the day to turn around and say it's all going to be worth it because we're going to cut your taxes. And what do we get? What do we get in this?
If you've got any money, we're coming for it. And at the end of the day, the difference between this particular government and, say, Margaret Thatcher's government was she created aspiration.
Yeah.
She made it possible for people who didn't have any money to get a decent job, to get a job in the city, to get a job in a place where they'd never thought of working before, creating industries, the creative industries, the advertising businesses, media, the city, all sorts of places where nobody had ever thought of working. Because I remember it, my sister was involved in it, so was I, at the time in the sort of the early part of the 80s. It was like the world was your oyster and you could make money, and people were very happy to do that, and they didn't mind paying tax because they were doing well. But now you're taxing people who are not doing well, who are worse off, not getting more money put into their pockets. It's an absolute shambles, completely ridiculous.
And it's the private sector that makes the money. It's those companies, those advertising agencies in the City of London that makes the money.
Exactly.
I love the NHS. The NHS is great, but it doesn't make any money.
No, it just eats money.
It eats money, and if you want to actually, we all, value public sector workers, teachers, doctors, all the rest of it, but they don't make money. The people who make the money are the people who are out there grafting, just as the NHS doctors are, just as teachers are, I'm sure. But the point is that they're out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Go down to
There are
Billingsgate
people
Market.
listening to this now. They call in every day and they say, I'm up at 4 o'clock. I'm going to work till 6 o'clock tonight. You know, I'm getting hammered. I'm getting, you know, my ULEZ charges are going up. My car's costing more money. You know, everything's taxed more than it used to be. Money is not at a premium in this country right now. People are worse off. Let's have a voice note from Liam.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent. What is going on? What is going on? Lucy Connolly, disgusting. It's outrageous that she's even still in prison. He's just thrown the whole country under the bus by aligning us with the EU. How are these people being allowed to do this? I mean, don't even get me started on David Lammy and the rest of them. Honestly, Mike, I'm having a real bad time at the minute getting to grips with how people can be so stupid. And it's thanks to people like yourself and talk that keep people like me sane. Have a great show, Mike.
Liam, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for your thoughts. It is insane. It is absolutely and utterly unfair. It's un-British. You know, Keir Starmer is a monster, quite frankly. I'm going to call him that. We're going to get Steve Reid on the show later on. He's the Environment Minister. I don't know why he suddenly decided to come and talk to us, but they must be getting worried because, you know, finally they're coming to talk to the enemy, you know. And so, you know, we'll see what he's got to say about it. But I'm going to put it to him. When we come back, I'm going to play you some more of Starmer when he went to visit a supermarket yesterday and was talking absolute and utter cobblers. 6:36.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. This from Andy in Sheffield. Mike, Starmer says putting the UK back on the world stage. He's right. It's like Billy Smart's circus, full of clowns and tightrope walkers. This so-called deal is a sellout, pure and simple. Starmer's bunch of clowns are now walking a thin tightrope. 18 to 35 are not youths. His maths are like Rachel Thieves' maths. God help us, Mike. Great show. Well, interesting you say that. Let's have a look at what Starmer did yesterday. He went to Aldi, right, which is everybody knows is a German-owned supermarket, which is not necessarily renowned for, shall we say, paying top dollar to British people to work for them. But have a look at this.
The important thing to remember is it's bills down and jobs up. That will make a big difference to you and your customers. Getting rid of the red tape, getting rid of the bureaucracy, and bringing the price of food in particular down. But you do get quite a regular a number of people who live locally who will shop in their local shops.
I agree, because I grew up around here as well. So
where did you grow up?
Next to King's Cross.
Oh yeah.
We don't have to queue up and to go to EU anymore.
No, this is good. The e-gates. This is the bit that most people will feel the impact of first. Getting rid of the problems with e-gates. Getting off the plane and have to wait in a queue, particularly one we didn't have to wait. Not so long ago. And it's so much better to be here with you than it is in Parliament. Yeah. It's the people that it really impacts. Thank you for your time. Really good to see you, and thanks for what you do.
I mean, I'm sorry. First of all, the e-gates, it turns out this morning, aren't even going to be open to anybody from this country until possibly 2026. Yeah. Nobody really that I've spoken to gives a damn about the e-gates at all.
They're going to change the language.
They either put up with waiting in queues, or like me, as I said to Blue in the face a couple of days ago, I actually used to find if I go to anywhere in Europe, you go through the non-EU channel, it's actually usually empty because there's nobody in it. You know, everybody else is in the EU channel, so actually, you know, there's no issue at all. And quite frankly, you get more delayed coming back to this country, normally speaking, than you do leaving it. You know, so it's all just a shibboleth of nonsense. But when he says there, you know, this is great, talking to ordinary people. These are a bunch of people who work for the company. He hasn't got the strength to walk around the supermarket and just go up to random people and say, how do you think the prices are coming down? Because they're not. Everybody knows the prices are not coming down. They're going up. Completely reversed. So when he says your bills are coming down, jobs are going up, it's just not true. How can he keep saying it? In any reasonable world, how can he keep just lying to the public and getting away with it? See, even you can't answer the question. You know, it's just not true. None of it's true.
Bills,
I mean, my bills aren't going down. Are yours?
No, they're not going down, I'm sure.
Have you gone into the supermarket any time recently and gone, oh, great, coffee's got cheaper?
No, haven't done that,
you know, what should I buy? Buy a couple of pizzas for the kids. Oh, I didn't know it was getting cheaper. It's not getting cheaper.
No.
It's getting more expensive.
It's getting...
And how is this EU deal going to make it cheaper? That's the other bit I'm going to ask Steve Reed, because I don't understand how that's going to work.
It's...
You can just say it's not, if you like, because I think that's the right answer. It isn't, is it?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think what they will say when they say you're going to put it to Steve Reed. He's going to say because it's going to make it easier to trade. Therefore, there are not going to be so many trading costs, and therefore products can move more freely, and therefore the cost of moving those products is going to be lower, and therefore that can be passed on in the form of lower prices.
Such as, well, I'm not going to rehearse exactly what I'm going to say to him, but you know, for example, olive oil. Will olive oil get cheaper as a result of this deal? I very much doubt it.
I very much doubt it as well.
I look forward to it getting cheaper, but you know, I quite like olive oil.
And if there's going to be, and you would you'd reasonably expect that if you are producing olive oil and you suddenly, and let's just supposing your costs for transporting that olive oil to the UK do go down and it's cheaper to go down, then actually you'll just pocket that difference.
Right.
And it's also worth remembering, of course, that products being exported from the European Union into the UK, or into Great Britain, I should say, because Northern Ireland's separate, but into Great Britain, that was always up to us anyway. And actually, many of those checks, Boris Johnson, when he did the deal, was just like, I'm not even going to bother. If the EU want to be really funny about it, they can be really funny about the rules and regulations. But in terms of exporting products from the EU into the UK, there are not going to be any checks. So I don't get how it's going to make bills cheaper.
No, I just don't understand it. Here's one from Daryl, who says, morning Mike, thanks for stopping me lose my mind on a daily basis. Starmer only cares and beats on about e-gates because it only benefits him as he spends as much time as he can out of the country. I'm going back to bed, wake me up in 3 years' time, please. Well, of course, he doesn't have to worry about e-gates, does he? No. He goes on a private jet and he gets a special escort, you know, around the sort of, you know, international curtain, as it were. Sean from Bridlington, I don't have the words to express how much I despise Starmer after watching that cringing video, and I'm a writer and a journalist, says Sean from Bridlington. This is the thing, people have this visceral hatred of him. Good morning, Mike and Theo. What the hell is wrong with this Labour government continuing day after day to ruin our country? I hate them so much for doing this, says Sharon in Staffordshire. You know, I mean, the list of complaints about this government just goes on and on and on. I've never known anything like it.
No, and his popularity rating is now lower than Jeremy Corbyn when he was leader of the Labour Party. Right. So he is...
And they've gone past, haven't they, the thing that they used to say, which was up until, say, the end of last year, well, we've had to do difficult things early. Well, they're continuing to be unpopular once they've gone into a second year. You know, they're about to enter, you know, what, 11th month of government, and so very soon it will be a year, and they continue to upset people and find new ways of annoying the public of this country.
But part of what works in Starmer's favour and part of what works in the favour of the Labour government is that it's all very well having having a negative poll rating, but the Tories aren't doing any better. So you can only... but
it's not about that anymore. The Tories are not in the game, right? So the Tories are not in the conversation.
You move on to Nigel, and you get to Nigel Farage, right?
Right.
But we end up with a fractured politics, and I think you know.
Yeah, but the bottom line for me, Theo, is that we've got a very unhappy country right now.
We've got
People
a really
are on the
unhappy
brink,
country.
right? People are on the brink right
I agree
now,
with you, 100%.
and they are feeling very, very put upon. They're feeling victimised. They feel that this government's doing everything wrong, and they look at people's reaction to Lucy Connolly.
Yeah.
You know, they think they've got it completely and utterly wrong. They're punishing the wrong people. They're letting criminals into this country
200%.
Who are being paid to live here by the taxpayer, and they are in a lot of trouble. Because it doesn't matter who the opposition are right now. They're the government, and they need to do something about that. Otherwise, there are going to be real problems in this country, I believe.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. But in terms of why that frustration builds and why it continues, is because the government, and this is the situation we're in, can do what they like.
Yeah.
And there is nobody...
Yes, but they can't do what they like in terms of making people this angry, because people will get angry and something will happen as a result of that. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to incite anybody to do anything. I'm just saying people are so angry that they will, you know, hit the breaking point at some point. And something small will trigger it. And that's the problem they've got. It's not, they haven't got a problem with reform because their election could be 4 years away. They haven't got a problem with the Tories because they're disappearing up their own backside. The problem they've got is with the people of this country.
And there's a huge amount of unhappiness.
And if they think they can keep doing what they like without any regard for that, then they are going to have a real problem. That's what I think.
Yeah. And
they don't appear to see that coming. They don't appear to have any strategy for that.
I would agree. The strategy point, I think, is there isn't. You can't. The problem they've got is you can't see the decision they're going to make next week, or the decision they're going to make the week after, or the week after, that is actually going to improve the way the lives of ordinary people. Right? What are they going to do, and do they have it in their mind's eye about improving the life in actual fact, making the decisions that make things better off? Now you can make the argument that they can't do it because of the constraints they have on the public finances at the moment. Fine. But
you can never make that argument anymore because they're wasting so much money on things like net zero, on GB Energy. They've just given 600 million quid. They've just given 600 million quid to a major energy company, Scottish Power, right, to work on some kind of renewable deal. You know, it's supposed to be the other way around. We're supposed to be getting money from the energy companies, which is supposed to be investment into the country. No, we're giving it out to them.
And they spent £10 billion, you know, when they came into office in terms of, you know, public sector pay rises. They went and increased national insurance. So they've got nowhere which actually put up the cost of government borrowing because other, you know, the markets look.
They've got no clue. Bottom line, Theo, they don't have a clue, do they? Really, at the end of the day, everything they're doing is damaging the economy. Everything they're doing is resulting in more borrowing, which they can't afford, and everything they're doing is resulting in more anger in the country. I mean, apart from that, it's all going really well, right? Listen, I make you speechless. I know we're all in trouble. Let's get a voice note from Kate.
Morning, Mike. It's Kate from Leeds. Really good show as usual. The clip what you've just played, Keir Starmer, about inciting violence. It's only when it suits him, isn't it? Because look at all the young white girls who's been abused, and they've gone and hidden. I'm really upset about this Lucy Connolly. I worked in prisons, and it's a political act. What's gone on is wrong, and they should hold their head in shame with what they've done. Thank you.
Kate, thank you very much indeed.
Really upset.
See, people are really upset and angry, and it's no small thing, because the bigger and the longer this goes on, the worse it gets for them. And they don't, if they don't see it coming, they've got a massive wake-up call coming. Peter says from Seaham Harbour, Theo, like the rest of the country, speechless. Susan says, Mike, love your show and all the others. How I used to watch BBC News and Sky News before I discovered this channel. I don't know. Keep up the great work, Sue in Essex. Phil in Coventry, I'm laughing at the show this morning. Sounds like you've both reached the end of your tether. It's got that bad. Don't worry, though. Starmer can and will make it even worse. And that's the trouble, because with every decision that he makes, I mean, for example, even the Gaza thing, which we'll talk about in a minute, because we've got to take another break. You know, he comes out yesterday in cahoots with Macron and Carney in Canada, right? Yeah. And he says, oh, we're going to call in the Israeli ambassador and we're going to, you know, start asking very, very serious questions. Guess who congratulated him for his foresight and insight into what's going on in the Middle East? Hamas. Hamas actually said that they welcomed the statement from Keir Starmer. If that doesn't tell you why he's on the wrong side of history, I don't know what does.
A prescribed terrorist organisation.
A prescribed terrorist organisation who call themselves Hamas, the resistance group. I mean, who murdered and butchered babies. I mean, that's who he's got the support of. He hasn't got the support of the country. Yeah, that tells you an awful lot, doesn't it? 6:49.
What's so extraordinary about it is that what we would think of, I think, what anyone would think of as more serious offences, receive lower sentences. So some people who actually were convicted pleaded guilty to participating in the riots last summer, received significantly lower sentences. People convicted for being members of rape gangs for offences like having sex with child prostitutes have been convicted for less than 2.5 years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Theo Usherwood is here with us as well. Neil in Dundee says, Keir is so out of touch, he thinks ordinary working people care how long it takes them to get through the airport instead of jobs, taxes or a national inquiry on the rape gangs. And Sharon from Staffordshire says, I really cannot see any bills going down. The prices in the supermarket are rising every day. And where the hell have we got more money in our pockets from? Because I can't see it. Exactly right. Absolutely correct. Nobody is telling me on any level whatsoever, on any metric that you care to measure, oh yeah, I went and bought a car the other day. I couldn't believe how cheap it was. I mean, people do say at the moment petrol's reasonably cheap, but and it's gone down a little bit. But when you compare it to other countries in Europe, it's a lot more expensive, you know. And I've said this many times, you know, Britain is an expensive country. The cost of living in this country just keeps going up. And everywhere you go, if you take your kids to France or Spain or, you know, Germany or Italy, you know, everything is cheaper.
And you feel like you've got a better deal.
Yeah.
And everything works.
Definitely.
So it's expensive and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I waited in yesterday, right, for 4 hours. I was asked to wait in for 4 hours so that some bozo from EDF, the power company, could come and change my meter over, right? I said, look, I'll do this just this once because, you know, not only did they not even turn up, but they didn't even call me. Right, the idea was that they were supposed to ring me half an hour before they got there. Right?
Do you think somewhere on their system, on EDF system, it's like got a little star, Mike Graham.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, 25 upper Woodbrook Close. It's like little star. Like this client has a radio show with how many listeners you got? A million
About
listeners. A million listeners. There is every chance that if we mess this up, we're going to get
they obviously don't have that because it got to 3:30. The window was from 12.
He's really grumpy and belligerent.
The window was from 12 till 4. I said to them, why does it have to be 4 hours? I said, can they narrow it down in the morning? No, because they're, you know, we've outsourced it to engineers.
He has a Twitter following of more than 200,000.
Yeah.
Just turn up on time.
So 12 till 4, right? So I'm thinking, right, so I can do a couple of errands because I can go locally. If they call me and say, we'll be there in half an hour, I'll get back, fine, no problem. It gets to 3:30, right? I had to come back here to do some more filming at 5 o'clock. So I ring them. I ring the EDF people in Sunderland, which is where they're based, and I get this woman who was more interested in making sure that I was who I said I was, so ran me through my, you know, my date of birth, my address, my postcode, my account number. By the time we actually got to have a conversation, I'd already been on hold for about 10 minutes, finally got hold of her. I said, well, the problem is, I said, they're supposed to ring me half an hour before. I said, if they ring me now, they won't be able to do the job because by the time they get here, I'm leaving. And she said, well, can you stay till 4 o'clock? I said, doesn't matter. Don't you understand? If they arrive at 4 o'clock, that's outside of the window of when they were supposed to do it. They were supposed to do it between 12 and 4, right? And so I said, what am I supposed to do? And I was very clear. Well, I wasn't rude. I didn't swear. I was very calm. I just said, look, what do you expect me to do here? I said, I've waited here for 4 hours. You know, I've got a job to do. I can't just wait here for another 4 hours. And she put the phone down. She put the phone down. And I'm like, she's literally just gone. And I'm waiting to hear from them for what I do now, because of course they keep telling me if you don't change your meter over, you won't have any electricity at the end of June. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
I'm pretty sure you're here.
Yeah. So EDF, if you happen to be listening, you know, you're an absolute disgrace, useless.
I'm pretty sure you're here.
Let's talk about Welsh Labour. Apparently, 20 miles an hour is a speed limit. It's too fast for them. Tell us what they want to do now.
They want to reduce it to 10 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour. I mean, people can cycle faster than that. But it means, I think many people can cycle faster than 20 miles an hour.
They can cycle faster than 20, yeah.
20 miles an hour. I think the 10 miles an hour, it's one of the columns on the page 8 of the Mail. So they've got this idea that they could do blanket 10 miles an hour right across Wales, and even suggested 5 miles an hour was fast enough for some roads. This is all
5 miles an hour. I mean, you can't even drive at 5 miles an hour, can you? I don't think that's even possible.
Funny, I bought a new car.
Physically possible.
I bought a new car the other day.
Was it cheaper?
No, it wasn't cheap.
No, funnily enough.
I bought a new car the other day.
Yeah.
And I've given up. I love driving geared cars.
Yeah.
You get more control. You can do whatever you.
Yeah.
I've given up on geared.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't.
You can't get out of second gear in London, do you?
So I just got an automatic car, and it's not what I wanted to do. I did stop. I'm not going to get an electric car. I just petrol's fine.
No, I talked to one of the guys. You know, we come in so early, not because we're superstars. We get taxis, right? And I get a guy quite often in the morning who's got an electric car. He told me it takes 10 hours to charge it.
Yeah, it's
10 hours.
It's fine. It's fine if you're just doing, if you like the guy who's driven you in his electric car, you just charge it overnight and then you do a circuit and then you can go again.
Right.
If you need to go like outside of London, I do a lot of journeys outside of London. If
he's got to take somebody to Heathrow,
if you go down to Sussex
or something,
it's stuff. You can't do it. But this is, I mean, it's funny, right? It's a funny story. 10 miles an hour.
How can you? Yeah.
But you can't run a business.
But it's a serious suggestion by the Labour-run government in Wales, right?
But you can't run a business.
No.
How do you get all your plumbing gear in the back of your van, and you got to make what 4 calls a day to break even? How can you do that if you can't drive at any speed between Mrs. Miggins and Mr. Jones?
Exactly.
How do you do it?
Maybe that was EDF's problem yesterday. They were driving too slowly, and they couldn't make it all the way to my place.
It's actually not funny.
No,
it's really not funny.
I'm not joking. Finally, Gary Lineker. After all the nonsense and you know, I speak for the minorities of this world and blah-de-blah-de-blah, it now looks like the police are going to be called in to investigate whether or not he committed a hate crime. As I said before, I'm not one of those people who thinks that people should be prosecuted for what they put on Twitter, quite frankly. Lucy Connolly shouldn't be in prison, so I'd be a hypocrite if I said that he should be prosecuted.
Well, come one and all, isn't it?
But certainly two-tier Keir should take an interest in it, but he won't, will he?
No, and he, you know, the Metropolitan Police are investigating this. What I sort of find the hand wringing of Gary Lineker's been subject to this, and Gary Lineker's left the BBC. People are going to. I've got a very, very close friend of mine is he does a lot of anti-Semitism training.
Yeah,
and he finds that when he goes into places, they don't. We're talking places, institutions, public sector institutions that you will have heard of. And I'm not going to break any confidences, but they don't want to know.
Right.
They don't want to have that training. Because what happens as a result of that tweet of, retweeting an emoji of a rat, we know how it actually is the language of the symbolism.
Also,
of
people don't
Germany.
realise it wasn't just a rat, it was a rat with a Jewish person's head.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, that's a rat, I didn't notice it.
Yeah.
You could tell exactly what they were doing.
They knew. And people will Jewish people will get abuse at the water cooler. They'll be talked about in derogatory terms. They'll be like, "Are you responsible for what's going on in Israel?"
I know.
They'll say all of that, and because Gary Lineker's done it, well, it's okay then.
It's all right. That's exactly right. That's the problem. Theo, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Lots and lots more to talk about. We've got a massive show for you this morning. We've got Nadine Dorries on. We've got Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary. Esther McVeigh's here, the former Minister for Common Sense. We've got Sir John Redwood. We've got Shadow Education Minister Neil O'Brien as well. This is, of course, a Morning Glory. We will be back after the news. We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah, a rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because in the 70s I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. We've got some breaking news for you. Inflation has jumped. We said yesterday it was likely to jump to 3.3%. That was our prediction. It turns out it's actually jumped to 3.5% in April. That's up from 2.6%, which is a massive jump. So as far as Keir Starmer is telling us that he's going to put more money in the pockets of working people, well, you know what's going to happen. Inflation up 3.5% means that everything is going to go up in price. It means that everything has already gone up in price. I've said this many times, you know, don't tell me that you're taking prices down. Don't tell me that bills are coming down, because no bills are coming down. Bills are only going up. Don't tell me that inflation is only actually even now running at 3.5%, when we know very clearly that many things, because you've told me, have gone up by 50%. Many things have gone up by 40%. Many things have doubled in price. You know, people told me that when they go to the supermarket now, they look at things that used to cost 50p and they now cost £1.65. You know, that's That's not 3.5% inflation. That is a multiple of 3.5% over months and months and months and months. And ever since this Labour government have been in charge, the economy has gone literally down the gurgler. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to get me on, because we've got a lot to talk about this morning, ladies and gentlemen. This country is in a really, really bad situation, because at the moment, all we know is that people are very unhappy. They're unhappy that Keir Starmer has rejoined us up with the European Union. They're unhappy that Lucy Connolly was refused the opportunity to appeal her sentence yesterday and go home to see her 12-year-old daughter, who she has been refused access to, by the way, since she was imprisoned about 10 months ago. This is a woman who did not commit any acts of violence, who wrote a tweet which was later deleted, which may, as you and many other people have said, have been unwise and may have even been something that possibly might have incited people to do some violence. But that was never her intention. That was never the point. She's a housewife who works as a childminder. She does not have a racist bone in her body. Her husband said that yesterday. She looks after children from all different races in her job that she does. But she has not only not been allowed to appeal her situation and be allowed to come out early from the sentence of 31 months, but she's also not even been allowed to go home and visit her daughter, who's not taking things very well at the age of 12. As you can imagine, it's an absolutely horrendous situation. When Keir Starmer was asked about the case yesterday, do you know what he said? He didn't say, you know, she was punished to the full extent of the law. He didn't say we can't make exceptions for people who were sent to prison because they pleaded guilty. No, what he said was, oh, I'm not across the details of the case. I mean, what a totally disingenuous answer. I don't think anybody believes him. Everybody knows that Keir Starmer tells one lie after another and expects to get away with it. Let's get a voice note from Bill.
Bill from Nottingham. When Keir Starmer said he wasn't across the detail of the Lucy Letby case, I actually believe him, because I don't actually think this guy's across the detail of anything. You can see that by his policies. Thank you.
Yeah, Bill, I think you're absolutely right. Not across the detail of anything. Mike says, Simon in Brentwood, if Keir is reducing bills, how come inflation has just gone up by 3.5%? Well, it's a very good question. I have absolutely no idea how that could happen. This is Morning Glory, though. Let us get it on. 6 minutes past 7. One from Matt in Aldridge. Morning, Mike. Brilliant show. Just a thought, if all of you listeners tweeted what Lucy did for 2 hours, would we all get locked up? Well, you know, that's a very interesting point. People have asked the question about Gary Lineker, you know, because he tweeted something really, really vile and hate-filled about Israel and about Zionists, you know. Will he, in fact, face the full force of the law? I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the people of this country have gotten very, very angry about what's happened to Lucy Connolly this morning, and we will continue to talk about that. We've got a whole host of incredible guests coming up in the course of the next couple of hours, including Esther McVeigh, including Nadine Dorries, and including, of course, the Environment Secretary, Steve Reed. We'll get from him precisely what is going on out there. A big tin of Sainsbury's coffee used to be £5, says Nick in Kent. It is now nearly £7. More money in my pocket, eh? Absolutely not. And Tim says, Mike, my disability scooter goes faster than 5 miles per hour. Yeah, I mean, that's in Wales. They want to reduce the driving speed to not 20. They weren't happy with that. First of all, bring it down to 10, and then possibly bring it down to 5 miles an hour. Have heaven's sake. Tony in Barron Furness says, Mike, I know 35-year-olds that have grown children, and some are even grandparents. Yeah, well, I think Angela Rayner was a grandparent at 35 or 36, wasn't she? And Phil says, Mike, maybe Welsh Labour are planning on abolishing cars completely and making people ride around on sheep to get to work. Well, I mean, I don't know if they're allowed to go faster than 5 miles an hour, are they? Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, Simon Danchuk's going to be talking to us later on this hour. Let's talk first of all to Joanna Bell, political journalist, of course. Joanna, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm feeling full of the joys of spring, despite the fact that I'm afraid this government is taking us even further into the mire. We did this deal with the European Union, which appears to be already unravelling. First of all, it turns out the e-gates actually won't be opening to anybody in any time soon, possibly not until next year. It looks as though the freedom of movement by another name is happening. They're going to invite lots of young people. I mean, I don't wish to cast aspersions, but I don't think you can be called a youth if you're 35, to be honest. And seemingly they're going to be allowed to bring their dependents with them as well. And it also turns out that the roaming charges are going to not be put down either. So if you're taking your phone to Europe, you're still going to get stooped by the Europeans.
Well, that's it, Mike. I predicted this 2 weeks ago. He was going to allow the freedom of movement of people. We don't need any more immigration in this country. It's absolutely shocking. You know, they are predicting that, you know, they're trying to say 9 billion extra on the GDP by 2040, which is only 0.2%. So it puts the Tories in a position where they'll have to go back to Brexit arguments. And who wants to go back there? It could be a masterstroke by Starmer.
Unlikely, isn't it?
Well, it puts the Tories in a position where they'll have to go back to all those Brexit arguments. And, you know, it screwed the Tories for them because it could be the final nail in the coffin. Kemi Badenoch can't support it. Reform won't support it. And they don't need to. The Tories are polled to lose 100 seats.
Yeah. But I think at the moment, is it not a bit redundant to talk about the Tories? Because I think, you know, at the moment, given that it's not unlikely to be another election, say, for another 4 years, you know, the only party that have got any skin in the game right now is Reform. And this is kind of, in a way, playing into their hands, because an awful lot of people that I've spoken to since Monday say that, you know, this is actually strengthening people's resolve to vote for a party that doesn't want closer ties to Europe, because this is not a deal that anybody really wants. You know, Keir Starmer keeps telling us it's a great deal. You know, prices are going to come down. They're not. You know, he says that jobs are going to be created. They're not. He says that, you know, it's going to be much better for us to deal with the European Union than it will be to deal with America and the rest of the world. You know, none of that is what people in this country want. They voted to leave the European Union because they didn't want to be governed by it.
Well, that's the thing. You know, the EU deal is going to lose Labour seats. And Reform has got to overtake them. The only problem with Reform is they're set to win, according to the YouGov poll yesterday, 300 seats. But Reform, you know, how far can they go in the cult of Nige? Like, at some point, it's bound to fall apart before they get to that point, which would put Labour in a very good position if they've already decimated the Tories.
Yeah, except for the fact that, as I've said in the first hour of this show, people are really angry with this government, right? And the biggest problem this government have got is not going to come from any other party. It's not going to come from whether or not they can lose an election or win an election in 4 years' time. It's going to be whether they can hold this country together over the course of the next, I would say, 18 months, because people are really, really angry with them. And everything they do is making people more angry.
Exactly. They're squashing aspiration, punishing investment, treading on innovation. People are paying tax on their savings now. They're going to have to pay tax on their savings. Banks are going to make money from deposits. Pensions are being attacked. It's just absolutely insane what they're doing. But that's what Labour do.
Yeah, but this particular Labour government is doing it a lot quicker than any other Labour government in my memory. I mean, when Tony Blair came in 1997, at least he had some decent people to put into a cabinet, and they had some decent ideas about how to modernise Britain, because at that time Britain did need a bit of modernisation. But what this lot are doing is destroying everything about the country which is good. You know, the Lucy Connolly story has really got people worked up. You know, it's clear that this woman should not be in prison. Yesterday she was in front of a judge who more or less called her a racist and basically accused her of being one of the worst and most evil people that walks the earth, right? And she's now gone back to prison. She hasn't even been allowed out to see her own 12-year-old daughter who is suffering as a result of not having had her mother for 10 months. It's absolutely shocking.
Well, look, what makes it even more shocking is you had that bad kneecap who called for Tory MPs to be killed, and they were given a £15,000 pound grant by the Labour government, and no repercussions for what they said. This is a mother who minds children, who, you know, is a very worthwhile member of the community, and we're paying for her to languish in prison. And that's the thing that's really wrong. There's paedophiles who are given suspended sentences, and they're let out, and no repercussions from what they've done. And this poor woman has been given 31 months in prison, and the same judge let off an MP and let him off early from his sentence.
Well, this is it. I mean, there are people who were arrested as a result of what they did during those riots last summer who actually did commit acts of violence, who have got less time in jail. you know, and she was obviously stitched up by her own lawyer who told her to plead guilty and to plead guilty to a very serious offence. You know, she tried to make it clear in the hearing yesterday, in the appeal hearing, that she wasn't very clear. She made a mistake. It wasn't explained properly by her barrister. They weren't interested. They did not give a monkeys. And I think the most disgusting thing, and I'm going to play it to you here, is Keir Starmer, when he was asked yesterday about the Lucy Connolly case. Have a look at what he said.
I'm not across the details of the particular case, but let me give you the principles that I would apply. Firstly, I'm strongly in favour of free speech. We've had free speech in this country for a very, very long time, and we protect it fiercely. I'm equally, though, against incitement to violence against other people. That has long been an offence in our country, and rightly so. And so I say, don't know the details of this case, but free speech, yes. Incitement to violence, no.
You know, the idea that he is so disingenuous that he's going to pretend that he doesn't know the case. He's not across the case. I mean, how pathetic is that?
Exactly. She's not exactly Charles Manson, is she? You know, nobody actually did burn down that hotel. Right. If they had have acted on what she said, then you could say, okay, you know, she's done something. But nobody acted on it. She deleted it immediately. She said sorry. You know, she spent Christmas in jail. It's absolutely shocking. It just screams of misogyny, you know, to be honest. That judge seems to hate women and children because, you know, he's letting off all these pedos and yet he's putting a housewife and a mother in jail and we're paying for it. And that's really what sticks in the craw, Mike, because it costs the taxpayer a lot of money to have this woman in prison. And it's really counterproductive because she's just going to end up a martyr. And people are going to, you know, really take this. And this is going to go against the Labour government.
It totally is, yeah. It's a real stain.
He's time to watch the Netflix show Adolescence, but he hasn't read anything about Lucy Connolly.
Yeah.
I really don't believe him.
Of course you don't. I mean, neither do I. Neither does anybody. He's complete. He's a liar. I'm sorry. You know, he's a congenital liar. He can't seem to stop himself from lying. In the same way when he tells people, oh, you know, your bills are coming down, the jobs are going up. You know, it's all rubbish. It's all cobblers.
All lies.
Meanwhile,
energy prices are high. They're not coming down, are they?
No, exactly right. And then the final story I want to talk to you about, front page of The Sun this morning, Joe, barking mad. We're now giving bed and board to an asylum-seeking dog, right? So, I mean, a very nice-looking Alsatian, very handily kind of blocked out so you can't identify him in the sun. He's got a little block over his eyes. German Shepherd made the perilous trip. So we've now got dogs crossing on small boats, right, coming to this country. We've got enough dogs, thanks very much indeed, but we've apparently paid to put this dog into quarantine in Dover. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe we have to put the migrants in quarantine. Maybe that's what we should do.
That's the thing, Mike. You know, you've got this dog. It could have rabies, right? Yeah. You're bringing these eradicated diseases into Britain. You know, you can't just bring a dog in to the country. And, you know, what's next? They're going to be bringing the nanny and the goldfish.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? And we're, meanwhile, dummies here paying for everything.
Well, that's the thing. You know, how poor can these people be or how desperate can somebody be if they've got a dog, right?
Yeah.
You know, they can't
when was the last time you saw somebody fleeing a war zone with a dog?
No, you don't. I mean, maybe in Afghanistan, but, you know, as we know, those dogs were famously left in Afghanistan when everybody done those flights out of there. You couldn't make it up, Mike. It's absolutely shocking. It's just a free-for-all for asylum seekers. Yeah. And, you know, as much as there are definitely needy causes, you know, there are definitely people out there who are being persecuted, but how much more can we take? 36,000 asylum seekers in since Labour got in office. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And now Keir Starmer is bringing in people from the EU, the free movement of people. So it's more immigration and more of a strain on our services, and it's absolutely disgraceful. It's as if Starmer is an enemy of the people.
Yeah, I know, and that is exactly how he's going to end up. Great to talk to you, Joanna Bell. Thank you very much indeed, political journalist there, giving us her view on the state of play, because the state of play, ladies and gentlemen, is in a pretty poor place. By the way, inflation jumped. Interesting to see what Rachel Reeves has got to say about this. She'll probably blame external factors. You know, the world is changing. You know, last week she was telling us that she was very happy with, you know, 0.7% growth, because that was a real sign that things were coming back in the economy. Well, this is going to kill it right off. Inflation jumping to 3.5% in April. Philip says this, Mike, I wonder how many of the 18 to 35-year-old Europeans that can travel freely to the UK are immigrants to the countries that will now be given those rights. Good question. And one here that says, morning, Mike and guests. Guess us hard-working, honest British taxpayers will pay all that illegal invaders, dogs, vets bills. What the hell is this once great country coming to? I despise how it is run. Exactly right. And Bridie says, Mike, let that doggy-owning illegal invader in. He's already proved his Britishness by bringing his dog. I wonder how much his place on the dinghy cost. Well, very good question. Let's get a voice note from Dave on speed limits.
Morning, Mike. Dave in Manchester. In regard to Wales trying to get the speed limit down to 5 miles an hour, I was on a Morrison's car park in Manchester a few months ago, and their speed limit is 5 miles an hour. While you're driving around the car park. So I thought, I'll try this out. So I was going at 5 miles an hour, and a 70-year-old walked past me. That's how ridiculous it is, mate. Anyway, fantastic show. Keep it up, mate.
Yeah, 5 miles an hour. Yeah, it's the speed limit they normally have up in car parks. Everywhere you go, you know, multi-storey, sometimes they have a sign that says 5 miles an hour on it. You know, you cannot drive a modern car in 2025 at 5 miles an hour. This is how crazy the Welsh Labour government have become. 20 miles an hour apparently far too quick. They want to reduce certain areas to 10 and in some other areas to 5. I mean, you might as well just walk. You can walk quicker, as Dave just says. This is Morning Glory.
I said, did he accept, given the surrender of the fishing industry, my fishermen are furious, the surrender of sort of rule-making, sovereignty and freedom of movement back to you? I said, did he accept that he had surrendered the jobs of many of his backbench MPs at the next general election to reform? He didn't like my question, but he sort of blathered some form of answer. But that's their reality. And it was interesting to note, many of the Red Wall MPs were not in the chamber to hear the Prime Minister's statement.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 7:23 is the time. We're here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's a big bank holiday weekend coming up. Of course, the rain will come, because it always does, because that wouldn't be a British bank holiday in May without rain, would it? Great show, says Tony in Boston. The PM says he's not across the details of the Lucy Connolly case, but then describes the two main details of the trial. Lying, plank of the week. Mike, regarding the dog that came over with the illegal immigrant, when it's done its quarantine and has been rehomed, I can see the illegal getting legal aid to get it back. says Mark. And one from Elle, who says, morning, Mark, I really want to phone into your show, but I'm so upset with this government, I can't speak without crying. I'm not sure why, but I'm angry and upset. Sad times. This is the thing, people are angry and people are upset because they're sick to death of being treated like second-class citizens in their own country. Allowing people to come to this country who have never been here, people that we don't know, people that we don't check, people that we don't do any background on, who come to this country and are walking the streets. Meanwhile, we're locking up childminders and allowing them no absolute quarter on when they are asking for a release to go home once in a while to see their children. Lucy Connolly's got a 12-year-old daughter who she hasn't seen, who she hasn't been allowed to see, who hasn't been allowed to go home to see her, despite the fact that most lags, most prisoners, are allowed out of prison on compassionate grounds if they've got families to see. It's absolutely ridiculous. Simon Danchuk's here. We're going to talk to him in a second. Brian is going to give us a voice note as well. But first of all, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been issuing a statement today on what's going on with inflation. Inflation has jumped to 3.5%, which is pretty high. It was thought to be going to be higher than 2.6. It was going to go up to 3.3. It's actually gone up to 3.5. She says this, I'm disappointed with these figures because I know cost of living pressures are still weighing down on working people. We are a long way from the double-digit inflation we saw under the previous administration, but I'm determined that we go further and faster to put more money in people's pockets. It's just rubbish, isn't it? You know, the double-digit inflation that happened under the previous administration stopped a long time before the election, let's put it that way. And the reason that there was double-digit inflation was because of the ridiculous, outrageous price of energy, which was going through the roof thanks to the Ukraine war, thanks to the net zero commitments made by both the Tories and this government, which allowed foreign entities to control where we got our energy from. This is what she goes on to say, Rachel Reeves. That's why we have increased the minimum wage for millions of working people, frozen fuel duty to protect commuters, and struck three trade deals in the past 2 weeks that will go towards cutting bills. That's not quite the same as what Keir Starmer said, is it? Keir Starmer said we are cutting bills. Bills are coming down. She's saying it goes towards cutting bills. Deary me. Let's get a voice note from Brian.
Morning, Mike. Do you remember when Starmer stood outside Downing Street and he says, we are here to serve? All that traitor's done is served us up to the EU.
Well, do you remember when he said country first, party second? Well, I don't know what happened to that slogan because he doesn't say it anymore, does he? Let's talk to Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP, of course, now with Reform. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's another disaster financially this morning, 3.5% inflation. Rachel Reeves says she's disappointed. I'm concerned that this country and the people in it are getting angrier and angrier with this government with every single day that passes.
There's no doubt about that, and the opinion polls show it. Mike, people are not just turning away from the Prime Minister, they're turning towards reform.
Yeah.
That's a clear protest against the main political parties.
Yeah.
And Starmer's is the Prime Minister, is one of the most unpopular Prime Ministers Britain has ever had. And I'm not surprised because his agenda, it just does not match up with what the British people want.
No. Well, he's now apparently more unpopular as leader of the Labour Party than Jeremy Corbyn was.
Yeah, no, and I'm not surprised. I mean, what we've seen over the last few days in terms of the European Union deal that he's done is that he's trying to shape Britain in his own image, and he's been waiting a long time to do this. He's always wanted Britain to be at the centre of Europe, so that's what he's trying to achieve there. He's always believed in European and international law, so that's what he's pushing. He's always believed in open borders and multiculturalism, and so that's what he's working towards, but he's going in the opposite direction of what the British people want. I have to say he's trying to do as much as he can before he loses power, because there is absolutely no doubt about it that he will not be Prime Minister after the next general election.
No, I'm not even sure he'll be Prime Minister as he goes into the next general election, to be honest, because of the way things are going. I mean, this Lucy Connolly story has really worked people up as well. Yesterday she appeared before the appeal court, hoping that they might reduce her sentence. She's already done around about 10 months of a 31-month sentence. But the judges in the case seemingly didn't see any reason to let her out, didn't see any reason to suggest that the punishment was way harsher than the crime that she committed, and showed really a complete and utter lack of empathy, I would say, to a woman who is a mother of a 12-year-old child, who's a carer for her husband who's suffering from cancer, and who's basically working as a childminder, looking after all manner of different children, all manner of different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's a very tragic story. And the bigger picture around all this is that we have leaders in Britain in the justice system. Starmer is one of them, but in the justice system, in the police, in prison service, in terms of governors, who have a particular worldview. And it's a worldview which sees people like Lucy speaking out about these sorts of issues as being the sort of person that should be in prison, whilst there are other criminals that shouldn't be in prison. I mean, it is perverse. And why we put up with it as a country, I do not know. But people, I think, are beginning to speak out more, campaign more. £100,000 been raised for Lucy's appeal, which I think is fantastic. Yeah. And as Alison Pearson in The Telegraph says, Lucy is a political prisoner. This is just outrageous and unacceptable in Britain.
And Boris Johnson this morning, front page of the Daily Mail, basically saying that this country is losing its reputation for free speech. He says Starmer's Britain is turning into a police state. And when you see Lucy Connolly's case, you start to wonder if he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading that piece by Boris Johnson. We were a proud nation in terms of free speech, and you played the piece earlier. Starmer saying he wasn't over the Connolly case. Well, perhaps he should be.
Well, I don't believe a word of that. Do you?
No, I don't. I think he'll be well aware of it and he'll be well briefed on it. And he doesn't care about the situation. He thinks she's been prosecuted correctly. And the judges are taking a lead from the Prime Minister. There's no doubt about that in terms of this case and in terms of other cases, because he's one of them. As I say earlier, they have a particular worldview and they're imposing it on people in Britain. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, and that is the real tragedy. I mean, the Mail have also run us a bunch of 6 ne'er-do-wells who have got sentences shorter than the one that she got, including Abu Wadi, a Palestinian who called for the slaughter of Jews and posted hate speech, admitted attempting to enter the UK illegally. He got 9 months. David Engelby rioted close to Southport's mosque the day after the girls' murders, hurled stones at the police, chanted anti-Islamic slogans. He got 28 months. Jack Poor threatened to slit the throat of his ex-girlfriend and petrol bomb her house. He got 31 months and was released early. Frederick Doe, part of a gang that stole an 18-carat gold toilet seat from Blenheim Palace, he got 21 months suspended. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on and on. You can find these people up and down the country in various different courts and various different situations, all of whom have got less time in prison than Lucy Connolly. And the fact that she's been refused permission to even go home for a visit, you know, a sort of a compassionate visit to see her own daughter is disgusting to me.
Where is the consistency in the British justice system? It's a truly tragic case. It involves a mother and a 12-year-old child and the husband. I mean, it's truly tragic. We have a 2-tier justice system in Britain, one that suits some people, but it doesn't suit others. And it's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Good to talk to you. Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Will on the dog.
Hi, Mike. Keir Starmer was recently asked about the Alsatian that crossed the English Channel. And this was his answer. I've heard the Alsatian made a perilous journey over the English Channel due to rough seas.
Very good. I see what you did there, Will. There is a great line, actually, in the Sun story with the dog sitting with his eyes blacked out so you can't make out his identity, sitting on an asylum seeker's hotel bed, basically going, the crossing was a bit rough. Of course they're going to say that. Very clever. We are now under a dictatorship. They are making huge decisions without even engaging Parliament or answering questions. This country is finished, says this message. David says, morning, Mike, just on your piece about the migrant dog. I'm moving back to the UK after 10 years and the paperwork I have to bring my cat into the UK is amazing. Her passport is thicker than mine. Yeah, I mean, I remember having to bring a cat back from New York all those years ago, having to drive out to the airport, to Kennedy Airport. The cat had to be in, a proper, carrying case and all that. And the poor thing had to be put on a plane, had to sit in quarantine in I think, America before it got back to the UK. Then it got back to the UK, was transported to this place near Dover. It might have been that one in Deal. We used to go and visit it. And the poor cat was never really the same again. Didn't really recover, but it was bleeding expensive is all I can remember. Sharon says, Mike, how can we be better off when inflation has increased from 2.6% to 3.5%? Can you enlighten me, please? Well, of course we're not better off, but a man who can explain it all is coming next. Justin Urquhart-Stewart. We'll ask him. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:34. I'm Mike Graham, and of course, we are here for the duration up to 10 o'clock, followed by Julie Hartley-Brewer, who will be here just before that to tell us what's coming up on her show. Joanna from Salisbury says, Mike, finally an arrestable offence under the Cruelty to Animals Act. That poor dog must have been terrified on a dinghy. And Pat says, Mike, after Starmer got his butt kicked at the local elections, he was telling us he gets it. No, he doesn't. If he did, he would pack his bags and go and live in Davos. We don't want him. Well, that's an interesting one as well. Lots of you wanted to get in touch here. Can Starmer sign this deal without reference or voting by Parliament? That's one of the questions that I was asking, actually, on Monday. The answer is that he's been to Parliament and he's answered some questions, but he doesn't apparently need, supposedly, any overarching permission to change the rules. He is acting as president rather than the Prime Minister, says Alan. It's time for Charles to dissolve Parliament. The Queen will be turning in her grave. Great show. Where is Nigel Farage? Nigel's actually taken a few days off. He posted a piece, he wrote a piece, in fact, I think, for The Telegraph yesterday, and he's written pieces for the Express as well. But he's actually, he put out a tweet yesterday evening saying that he'd been campaigning pretty much non-stop before the Runcorn by-election and before the local elections, and so he was taking a few days off, which I think he's allowed to do. He's been very well represented by Richard Tice, and yesterday we had Sarah Poachin on, of course, as well, talking about the reform position and the reform situation. So I don't think you should be too harsh on him. He's allowed a bit of a break once in a while, because the man is probably the hardest working man in politics, whatever you may think of him, whether you agree with him or not. Let's get a voice note from Russ.
Morning, Mike. Russ here from Hertfordshire. Absolutely fuming with a shower of sugar. How can he be bleating on about blinking e-gates and be so happy about them, because no one's going to be afford to use them because they can't get out of the country because they can't afford an holiday. I hate this. Oh, I can't. Thanks, Mike. Have a good day. Bye.
Russ, listen, I feel your pain, man. I mean, everybody feels the same way. It's very frustrating. So imagine sitting here but not being able to swear. I mean, I did say the B word just before 7 o'clock, but hopefully nobody's going to complain about that. But to be honest, it's really, really difficult, because you get so worked up, you get so annoyed, so angry with what's going on in this country. And, don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining is a line from one of the Clint Eastwood films, The Outlaw Josie Wales. It's absolutely right. Do not tell me that everything's going fine. Keir Starmer talks about bills going down, jobs going up. It's not happening. Let's talk to Justin Urquhart-Stewart, an economist, of course, a man who will tell us all about why inflation has jumped to 3.5% in April from 2.6% in March. Justin, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We were expecting about 3.3% yesterday when I was doing this show at this very time. So it's a bit worse than expected. Even Rachel Reeves says she's disappointed.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. When they said things are going up, I don't think she didn't exactly want this one to go up by 3.5%. That's quite a significant level. When you look at why this is occurring, now, the argument will be that a lot of this is going to be sort of one-off household issues, because gas has gone up, electricity's gone up.
Yeah.
But remember, the base cost of that, yes, of course, it's inflation, it goes up, but every time that goes up, it means it's more money coming out of your income every month. That's less money for you to go and spend. And remember, 60% of our economy is based on you and I, well, not just the two of us, but the consumer going out and spending stuff. And if you're just taking money out the entire time, of course, you're not going to be able to grow the economy.
Right.
Now, we add to that, you've got airfares going up, but of course, the other bit, of course, is national insurance comes in. And that's a significant level. And the bit I think that really grates a lot of people is when we actually hear, and they've put up the minimum wage. No, they haven't. No, they don't pay the minimum wage. Companies pay the minimum wage. Right. They've had to put the cost up. And companies then get blamed for that. And of course, it's not. This is a government just being dictatorial about it and saying, we're going to put pay up. By the way, you're going to pay for it. And so that means less investment going in, less jobs being created. And I'm afraid you're just being squeezed yet again. So
everybody you talk to will tell you the same story. I mean, I've got a son who lives up in Manchester, goes to uni there. He works as a part-time job, working in a sort of hospitality scenario. And he said, the company have decided that they're going to use less people and have fewer shifts because of the fact that, and it's quite a big organisation, because national insurance has gone up, minimum wage has gone up, so they can't afford to give as many shifts out, which means that, more people are poorer.
And so you're not seeing the growth in the economy. Now, how do you get growth going in? Well, there's one key way of doing it, and actually encouraging confidence, getting companies, giving them the confidence to go out and spend and invest. Now, one of the great schemes we have for that was known as the British the Enterprise Investment Scheme, where up to 50% of the money can be guaranteed. So it doesn't cost the government anything. It's people putting money out of their pockets themselves, investing in businesses. But if it goes wrong, then the government will actually provide some sort of guarantee for some of it. But of course, some of them will go wrong. Quite a lot of them go right, in which case the government earns more money out of taxation out of this. And that is the way you encourage more investment, more companies to get going, and encouraging that magic word, confidence.
Yes.
And at the moment, you're seeing in the high street, and what you're seeing, but I'm seeing a record number of shops now closing.
Yeah.
And not becoming rather dodgy barbers shops and more coffee shops, but actually just closing and not opening up again. And I'm afraid this is actually meaning we're going to have a pretty thin summer, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly right. And also, how is it that nobody in this government seems to have a clue about economics? They don't seem to know that if you push that lever over there, then this happens over here. I mean, your child could have taught you this at the age of 10.
It is ridiculous, because when you actually look at the amount of experience people have had in business, and when I mean in business, I don't mean just working for a company. I mean people have actually put their house up on the line or put their capital up to actually sit there and wake up in the morning in a cold sweat wondering if they've still got a business or not. And those people who actually been in that position, it doesn't sound like it to me. And Rachel from accounts certainly hasn't. So I'm afraid that with the Treasury, and unfortunately the Treasury don't have the expertise they used to have years back, because they used to be there for a lifetime. Now they're there for 3 or 4 years, then they go on to the Foreign Office or something like that. So bright people, I'm sure they are. But they don't have that expertise, that understanding. How do you get the economy to work? And I say, it's not that difficult when you actually think about where does money come from, how do you encourage that confidence coming in, and actually then getting people to invest, employing more people, and giving them the confidence to go and spend. So there are various areas we've got in success in this country, our high-tech areas, those sort of areas we should be focusing to get them, allow them to grow, giving them more support. Don't get the government to invest in it. Heaven, don't want government investing in anything. But allow actually investors to be able to actually put money in, give them some support in that, and you'll get some growth coming. That's how we've always done it, and it's worked in the past.
Yeah, exactly right. Meanwhile, front page of the Telegraph today, I don't know if you've seen this, is that Angela Rayner's apparently got a plan to take even more money away from anybody who's got any. They're suggesting that it's a real sort of schism at the top of the government between her and Rachel Reeves. She wants them, rather than to cut public services, basically raise more taxes from people's savings.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. What they're looking to is, let's increase the number of people paying tax. Now, nice idea. When you retire, the idea is you've got your retirement pot and you don't have to pay tax anymore because of you're not earning as much. And so that's fine. But unfortunately, what's been happening is because we've had this fiscal drag, which is not cross-dressing accountants, this is all to do with actually making sure tax levels being maintained, frozen. So more and more people are being dragged into tax. And so what you're seeing now is record levels of people people now are paying tax who frankly shouldn't be there. They're at the stage of their lives where they can't actually earn any more to actually pay for their pension. So they're sort of stuck in this sort of doom loop of actually increasing costs and not being able to actually get more money in the other side of it, unless they're going to ask people in their 70s and 80s to actually go out and get a job. And so it is, I'm afraid...
Well, good luck with that.
Well, exactly. And so maybe you have to go and find another country to go and do it. Spare me.
Well, that is the problem. An awful lot of people, if they have the ability and the means to do so, are just leaving. I mean, there's millions of people leaving this country right now because they can't stand the government and they don't want to be here when they start putting taxes up even more. Because as we speak, the economy gets worse and worse every day.
Well, being in a position where you've worked hard all your life and you've actually paid a fair amount of tax, a lot of tax, and if you've run a business, you've been in a position where you've been actually helping creating jobs, creating wealth, getting more jobs coming through. There's no thanks for any of that at all, except at the end of it now find yourself having to pay more tax. And so understandably, people say, well, actually, let's go to a country where you're thanked for actually being successful in these things, like America. And it is frustrating that you're finding that position. You can go to Europe these days because you're going to get taxed even more heavily there. So I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult. No, what we need a government here who understands how to create wealth. It's not a matter of being just make money for the wealthy. Make sure there's a fair amount of tax being paid. It's actually creating wealth for the country. And you do that by getting those businesses larger and encouraging them to invest more. And then lo and behold, actually, you get more people being employed, more people employed. That means more pay, that means more tax coming into the government. It's not that difficult.
Also, people will spend more money in the high street. You know, it really isn't rocket science. Great to talk to you, Justin. Thank you very much indeed. Justin Eckert-Stewart explains to us why inflation has jumped to 3.5% in April and why it's bad news for this government, because they get everything wrong and they've got this wrong as well. Absolutely extraordinary. Let's get a voice note from Mark on the dog.
Hi Mark, great show, Mark from Bridgnorth. Only a quick one on the dog. I think he's come to wanted to come over to our wonderful country because he heard about Sakia releasing the sausages. Cheers, mate.
Very good. I like it. Keep those coming on the migrant dog. This is the front page of the Sun this morning. Haven't given the dog a name, actually, which I'm quite surprised about. Normally, you'd give him a name. Not quite sure where he's come from. But apparently his owner brought him over on a perilous trip on a dinghy. Right, from Calais, taken ashore at Dover, sent to quarantine. He's going to stay there for at least 4 months while his owner is believed to be in a hotel. That's all right, isn't it? So the owner's in a hotel, the dog's in quarantine getting paid for by the taxpayer, of course. So pets on migrant boats, marvellous, isn't it? This one from Alan in Middlesbrough, who's actually in Kefalonia at the moment, currently holidaying in Greece and stumbled across a Starmer bar in my dream. It had a sad hour where drinks become more expensive the longer you stay in and sell cocktails such as Grim and Tonic, boats on the beach, frozen pensioner on the rocks. Yeah, very good. Well done. John says this, Mike, Starmer can't even do his press interview promoting his EU deal from a British supermarket. It has to be from a German shop, Lidl. And Andy in Hexham says, morning, Mike, the problem these Labour traitors have is that they were elected by 20% of the electorate. 80% of the electorate didn't want them from the start. And so it proves. And they keep making these ridiculous statements, you know, helping working people, putting more money in the pockets of working people. That's not happening. Inflation's just gone up to 3.5%. There is no bill that is coming down. And there is no job that is being created. So where Starmer's getting this fantasy world from is anybody's guess. Does he live in a fantasy world? Does he understand the real world? Does he understand real people's problems? I'm beginning to wonder, and I'm not sure he does. And as if to add insult to injury, he put out a joint statement yesterday with Emmanuel Macron and the Prime Minister Carney in Canada, basically having a go at Israel and saying that, you know, it's untenable what they're doing in Gaza. And they were congratulated by, least of all, Hamas. Hamas said that they welcomed Keir Starmer's statement. Doesn't that tell you all you need to know about the state of this Prime Minister? Coming up, Paul Harris, the editor of the Jewish Telegraph, will tell us why.
said, did he accept, given the surrender of the fishing industry, my fishermen are furious, the surrender of sort of rule-making, sovereignty and freedom of movement back to you? I said, did he accept that he had surrendered the jobs of many of his backbench MPs at the next general election to reform? He didn't like my question, but he sort of blathered some form of answer. But that's their reality. And it was interesting to note, many of the Red Wall MPs were not in the chamber to hear the Prime Minister's statement.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:49. Steve says this: in one way, every crackpot decision by this Starmer government comforts me that they'll be obliterated next time around. But in another 4 years, this country will have been destroyed beyond recovery. In many other less tolerant countries, there'll be some form of revolution. One from Tony, who says, Mike, we should return boat migrants to detention camps in Libya. The boats would certainly stop then. And Sean in Gloucester, every bloody day that pathological lie of Keith Starling just gets worse. I seriously don't know how much more this once great country can take before we are broken for good. They really must go now, otherwise I fear we are lost. Absolutely incredible stuff. And just on a slightly lighter note, Cliff Selwick tells me if you were going to drive at 5 miles an hour to get from Swansea to Bangor, which is 155 miles, it would take you 31 hours. Dear God. Let's talk to Paul Harris, editor of the Jewish Telegraph, because yesterday another development in the international world of Keir Starmer, which I think, again, rather shamefully puts him in a place with two other, country leaders, Emmanuel Macron and Mark Carney from Canada. He basically announced that they were going to recall, or at least call, the Israeli ambassador in London into the Foreign Office to have a conversation about what is going on in Gaza. The end result, of course, of a statement that was put out by Starmer and the other two was that it was welcomed by, of all people, Hamas, which, as the Israeli government said, pretty much shows you're on the wrong side of history. Paul, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, I'll just play you a quick clip of, if I may, of what Starmer said in Parliament yesterday on Gaza. Let's have a look.
But first, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say something about the horrific situation in Gaza, where the level of suffering, innocent children being bombed again, is utterly intolerable. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend we coordinated a response with our allies, as set out in my statement with President Macron and Prime Minister Carney last night. And I want to put on record today that we're horrified by the escalation from Israel. We repeat our demand for a ceasefire as the only way to free the hostages. We repeat our opposition to settlements in the West Bank. And we repeat our demand to massively scale up humanitarian assistance into Gaza.
I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm slightly puzzled as to why Starmer's decided to do this now.
Well, maybe it's a simple way to bury bad news. I think
maybe
this is an ideal opportunity for him. But Israel is probably the only country in the world where other countries seem to believe that they can interfere in its politics. It's also the only country in the world where other countries believe that they can dictate where its capital should be.
Yeah.
Just another incidence of this. I think the Jewish community in Britain is going to be appalled at Starmer's stance on
Oh,
this.
it has been, yeah, absolutely has been, as a witness yesterday. But what really shocked me was Hamas's statement. Hamas welcomes UK, France and Canada's statement as a step in the right direction. You know, this is a proscribed terrorist group who are basically congratulating the British Prime Minister for attacking Israel.
Strange bedfellows.
Very strange.
A prescribed group. Are we now going to see talks between Hamas and the Labour government? Who knows?
Well, you know, you say that in jest, but I bet you there will be people like the people representing Hamas in a lawsuit, who are bringing a lawsuit, I believe, in the courts in this country, for Hamas to be recognised as a government rather than to be treated as a terrorist organisation.
This action by the firm of lawyers was vexatious anyhow, and I believe this has been reported to the Solicitors Regulation Authority in any case.
Yeah.
This doesn't stand a chance. I mean, this is just posturing. It's nothing but that.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, there are people on the left who will say, Nelson Mandela was once described as a terrorist. Now we've got Hamas there fighting for the rights of the people of Palestine. You know, there is a thought process there that some people believe.
Yeah, but overall, this situation is quite ridiculous, quite ludicrous. Hamas, right from the word go, right from the get-go, has had the opportunity for this Israeli incursion into Gaza to end. Release the hostages, Israel would reduce its action. Israel, even now, Hamas is prepared to have cells of terrorists embedded among the population. Is it any wonder that people are getting killed? Nobody wants to see innocent people, women, children particularly, being killed. But again, I'd ask the question, nobody seems really to point to this. Have you ever seen an ill-looking terrorist in Gaza? Have you ever seen people who look malnourished?
Well, and I made this point just the other day on Twitter. You know, we've been told there's a famine in Gaza since about October 2023, but people are not actually starving.
Well, I don't know about everybody, but have you seen any of the Hamas leaders appearing starving? Do they appear to be dishevelled? Do they appear to be living in poor conditions? Of course they don't. And this is the whole point. The Hamas is prepared to let the people of Gaza suffer just to achieve its own evil ends. It's as simple as that. But Starmer doesn't seem to recognise this, and a couple of other countries also.
Yeah, exactly right. So what does this change in effect, though? Because, we saw yesterday Starmer saying that they wanted to bring the Israeli ambassador in to have a conversation. They're talking about certain... David Lammy also spoke about certain members of the Israeli government who have been making what he regarded as extremist threats against the people of Palestine. I mean, this really puts Britain out on a bit of a limb, doesn't it, in terms of international diplomacy?
Well, I can assure you that the Israel ambassador, Tzipi Hotovely, will not exactly be very concerned about being called into the Foreign Office for talks. Israel will not be cowed. I mean, we've heard Benjamin Netanyahu's response. Israel will not be bullied, pressured by any other country. Israel has to look after itself, and only Israel knows what is actually happening. The only end to this situation will be when Hamas is removed from Gaza, and if Gaza remains as a Palestinian enclave, then Hamas has to disappear. It's as simple as that. And while Hamas is there, this will continue. There's no question about it. But Israel will not be dictated to, and Netanyahu has made this very, very clear. He will continue the course of action he believes to be right. Of course, it looks really, really bad. The Hamas propaganda machine is in full swing, and Hamas loves nothing better than to show bodies, injured people, hospitals overcrowded. But Hamas has it in its power and its gift to do something about this, and it has right from the beginning, but it doesn't want to.
Absolutely right. Just while I've got you on, Paul, let me ask you about Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker this morning, we're told, is possibly under investigation. Certainly people have complained to the police. He may well be under investigation in the coming days for that tweet that he put out, which resulted in him pretty much getting fired from the BBC. I mean, you might say that he has fallen in some ways for Hamas propaganda as well.
Well, I was speaking on this station last night about this. I don't believe a word of his crocodile tears. I don't believe his apology whatsoever. This is an intelligent man. He was part of a generation of footballers which wasn't particularly well educated. Gary Lineker was. He was a grammar school boy. As he actually has said, you have to know your history. Of course he knew his history, and I don't believe a word of the fact that he didn't actually know what the rat symbolism meant. And quite rightly, he should be investigated.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that he didn't know what the rat symbol was is a ridiculous statement as well, because it wasn't just a rat. It was a rat with the face of somebody who was clearly being cartoonised, if you like, as a Jewish person.
Of course. Look, Gary Lineker is an intelligent man. As I was saying again on this station last night, the BBC still has a lot to answer for. I was appalled to see Gary Lineker still in place for the Cup final last Saturday. I'm appalled to hear that he's actually going to be presenting Match of the Day this Sunday. If the BBC really, really wants to show that it's contrite, that it believes that Gary Lineker shouldn't have done what he did, then Gary Lineker should be removed immediately. He should not be appearing on the screens again. And I think that the investigation by the Met Police is quite right.
Yeah, I think I would totally agree with that. Paul, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Paul Harris, editor of the Jewish Telegraph, says, Sarah, near Plymouth, I keep on wishing that this Labour government is some kind of Bobby Ewing is dead dream. We'll wake up and Penny Mordaunt will be Prime Minister of a big majority Conservative government. And that would be some kind of a weird dream, wouldn't it? I don't think that's happening anytime soon. John says this, Mike should call out the useless TV staff who don't have the wit or brains to ask the correct questions. Starmer says he doesn't know the details of the Lucy Connolly case, so ask why not? And then, well, you now familiarise yourself with it, and we will ask you again tomorrow. Well, this is the thing. I mean, when people get an opportunity to ask Keir Starmer a question, I don't get that opportunity because he doesn't come on this show. You know, I wouldn't have let him get away with it. I would have gone, how do you mean you're not across the detail of this case? This is the most high-profile case that has resulted from that terrible event in Southport last year, the event that left so many people damaged, left 3 little girls dead, left families completely torn asunder, people still suffering from their injuries. This morning, in one of the papers, there's an interview in the Times with one of the teachers at the dance class who says she still can't even think of handling a knife because of the trauma that happened. And he's going to say that he doesn't know the details of the Lucy Connolly case. Complete and utter balderdash, I'm afraid. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it for a second. Nicholas says, morning, what about all the people that can't afford to have dogs? This country is a laughing stock. Absolutely brilliant show. Yeah, we're now housing dogs for illegal migrants, right? There's a dog that's come over. Nigel says we should call it Rover. Obviously, I suppose you would have to. 0344 499 1000. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to speak to Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense. Stephen Wolfe is here. We're going to talk to Nadine Dorries as well. She's got plenty to say about Gary Lineker and the BBC. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Which is much bigger every...
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay!
87222, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space on a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Oh, no, I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so many to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what... There's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. We are, of course, here with you. It's Wednesday, the 21st of May. There will be some Prime Minister's questions, I guess, later on today, coming up at midday. We'll keep you across that, of course, with Julie Hartley-Brewer on her show. Inflation has jumped to 3.5% in April. We predicted this yesterday. We thought it was actually going to be 3.3%. It's actually got worse than 3.3%. Rachel Reeves says she's disappointed with the figure because obviously what it's going to mean is it's going to put a massive hole in Labour's plans to try and bring the economy back to life in some way, shape or form, because what it will do is put prices up even more. It will make money in people's pockets shrink even further. So putting money in the pockets of working people has taken a bit of a bash this morning. She says, of course, the problem is that they have to go further and they have to go faster. Well, I agree with that. Just keep rowing further away from the country and keep going faster and faster. With a bit of luck, by the end of the week, you'll be in Zambia or somewhere where you won't be able to do any more damage to the British economy. That would be brilliant. Absolutely fine and fantastic. Coming up in this hour, Esther McVeigh's going to join us, former Minister for Common Sense, of course. She was giving them some jip yesterday in Parliament. We'll bring you some of that. Ross Clark has written a column about the Brexit debate, which is restarted thanks to Keir Starmer and his ridiculous deal with the EU that was announced on Monday amidst much fanfare. It's already unravelling, by the way, because it now looks as though the e-gates that they made so much of a fuss about, which don't matter really a jot to most people in this country, won't even be operational for British people until probably sometime late in 2026. It also looks like the Freedom of Movement Brigade are going to be jumping up for joy because people will be able to come here from Europe up to the age of 35, and guess what? They'll be able to bring their dependents with them as well. It's hardly a youth experience, it's more like a family experience. Come and rinse Britain, because that's what everybody else does. We've even got a dog doing it at the moment. There's a dog sitting in quarantine, paid for by the taxpayer. We're calling him Rover for the moment. Rover and out, you might say. Apparently the crossing was a bit rough. Yeah, I know. What can I say? How about this from Paula?
Morning, Mike. Inflation at 3.5%. This lot are pulling our leg. Have you seen what they include in a basket of goods to measure inflation? A virtual reality headset, pulled pork, a mango, an exercise mat. Oh, I must admit they're in my shopping basket every week. How about the price of butter, the price of bread, the price of milk that is just going up week on week on week in the supermarket that everybody has to buy week on week on week? It's ridiculous. They are having a laugh. 3.5%. Come on, let's get real. Thanks, Mike. Paula in Liverpool.
Paul in Liverpool, you're absolutely right. The basket of goods business is completely and utterly wrong, because we did this a week or two ago and we found out that actually inflation is much higher than what they tell us at 3.5% even. Certainly was much higher than 2.6%. In some cases, things are going up by a factor of 2, so that's like 100% up. Some things are up 50%. Council tax is up, 10 to 20%. All sorts of things have gone up in price massively over the course of this last Labour government since July of last year, and there's no way that it's coming back down anytime soon. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Mike says this morning, Mike, great show. There's always been two-tier justice since I was a teenager. If you're a pop star, a film star, or a footballer, you get off. If you're a working class lad, you get the full force of the law. I'm 57 now. Nothing has changed. Well, Lucy Connolly is a big story this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of you are very, very worked up and very upset about it because, quite frankly, she should not be in prison. She should be home with her 12-year-old daughter and her husband who's suffering from cancer. She should be doing her job of caring for children in her community who come from all manner of different backgrounds. She should not be in jail. She was given an opportunity yesterday to appeal and the appeal was turned down simply because of a point of law, which shows you absolutely everything about this country and why the justice system is wrong. And believe it or not, when Keir Starmer was asked about Lucy Connolly, he said this. Have a look.
I'm not across the details of the particular case, but let me give you the principles that I would apply. Firstly, I'm strongly in favour of free speech. We've had free speech in this country for a very, very long time, and we protect it fiercely. I'm equally, though, against incitement to violence against other people. That has long been an offence in our country, and rightly so. And so I say, don't know the details of this case, but free speech, yes. Incitement to violence, no.
Free speech, yes, according to the Prime Minister. Let's talk to Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense, of course. Esther, I mean, I don't know where to begin with this guy, really. The idea that he says he's not across the detail of the Lucy Connolly case, one of the highest profile cases of a woman going to jail in the history of this country. I mean, how can he even stand there and say that with a straight face? Morning.
Well, he did come across removed from reality, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think the fact that he said he didn't know about this or he wasn't across the facts of the case is something that all politicians say when they don't want to answer a question. The reality is this lady has been treated incredibly cruelly, and her sentence is absolutely disproportionate to what she did. We knew the tweet was vile and cruel, etc. She admitted it. She said it was wrong. She took it down. But how she's been treated is rather peculiar, because the courts always bend over backwards so as not to put a woman in prison, particularly a woman with a child, and with children they bend over backwards. This hasn't happened here. Worse still, she's been available, or she would have been allowed to have gone for something known as release on temporary license since last November, which meant she would at least be able to go home and see a child and a husband who's ill for maybe a weekend every fortnight. She hasn't been able to do this either. So the whole case stinks, quite frankly.
It does. And I mean, it reads very much like a stitch-up, doesn't it? That she was advised by her barrister to plead guilty to quite a serious charge on the grounds that she would be treated more leniently. And it seems to me, and it's only a supposition, it seems to me that most of the people who pleaded guilty were given pretty extensive sentences. You know, we know what Keir Starmer thought of them all. He accused them all of being part of some far-right thuggery, organised sort of criminal enterprise, which has now been completely and utterly disproven. They were just ordinary people who were criminal on that particular occasion because they were you know, worked up. They were driven to it for one reason or another. We don't excuse what they did, and you know, yes, some of them should have gone to prison, but you know, she's got more of a sentence than some of the men who were involved in actual violent rioting, which doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
And that is the point that the public are getting angry about. And that's why they're talking about two-tier policing. They're talking about two-tier sentencing. You could be a family talking about a teacher being recruited on WhatsApp and 6 police go round and knock at your door. Remember that case from a few weeks ago? No. Now, there is something, you know, if I'm being honest here, if there are riots, if there is civil disobedience, you will find that the courts will come down hard as if to make an example of those people. And that happened back, I don't know if you remember the riots 2011 when David Cameron came in. So people who could have been on the periphery of a riot was treated very harshly. We get that. This is to say, we do not expect her to do this. You should not do it. However, now, when we see this unfairness, this cruelty treated towards it, it does seem as if they are making an example of her, and it is, I'd say, like I said, it's cruel.
Yeah, and as you say, there's nothing in the world that would stop them from allowing her out, you know, every couple of weeks to see her daughter, who's 12 years of age, who's apparently really struggling with the fact that her mother's not around. And, you know, it's just incredible to me when you see the stories today about what the plan is to release several thousand prisoners on an electronic tag, some of whom are violent criminals, some of whom are sex offenders, some of whom would have been involved in domestic abuse cases, and yet she can't get one.
And she'd be top of your list, surely, to release out. And that's why I say this Labour government are looking so far removed from reality. Keir Starmer, he didn't know what was going on. They don't know what people are talking about in the local pub. They don't know what people are saying in the community. They are not seeing the grievance that's going on here.
No, exactly right. You were up in Parliament yesterday asking a question of the Chancellor. Let's have a look at that and see what happened.
Mr. Magpie.
I'm sure the Chancellor subscribes to the basic principle that if the cost of something is put up, then we'll see less of it. It's the reason that governments over many years have put taxes on things like smoking. Does she accept this principle also applies to employing people? And the more expensive this government makes employing people with its jobs tax, increasing nick for employers, the less we will see of it.
Well, I think a really good example of that is the Conservative
Conservative Party. The cost of the Conservative Party went up and the number of MPs shrunk.
They really don't like being challenged, do they? They get very shirty. You know, Keir Starmer last week was really rude. He apologised, in fact, yesterday in a rare moment where he said to that Plaid Cymru MP that he had been unduly rude to her. He'd obviously been told that, you know, that wasn't a great look because we know he doesn't deal very well with women, and that really did make him look a bit of a misogynist last week. But poor old Rachel Reeves doesn't seem to get it, does she? I mean, today we've got inflation jumping to 3.5%. Jobs getting cut all over the place, and she'd rather try and sort of insult the Tory party than actually answer in a responsible position.
Well, I think it's showing now the inexperience of this government, and I would also say they all seem hugely out of their depth.
Yeah.
And this was a basic economic principle. If it costs more, you see less of it.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that now with employment. We are seeing all of these taxes, the rise in national insurance contribution, the increase in the minimum wage, the workers' rights bill, which will put another $5 billion on businesses, and we are seeing those businesses shrink. We are seeing them not employ people, have fewer people employed, or we are seeing them sort of close in its entirety or move abroad. And this is what they're doing. So every day now they seem to be surprised, or Rachel Reeves today was disappointed with the increase in the inflation figures, but they are dismantling the economy bit by bit. Prices are going up, inflation's going up, people can't afford, and so they won't spend the money, or they'll close the business. I mean, what governments usually do and use taxation for is sort of promote behaviour they want, i.e. saving, growing the country, increasing your business, and increase taxes for behaviour they don't want, which was why I gave the example of smoking. They singly failed to do this and understand this.
Absolutely right. And today I think Liz Kendall is going to make her little announcement about benefit cuts, which is going to cause a massive rebellion on the backbenches of the Labour Party, because there's two people back there. There's the ones who want him to go even further into the European Union, and there's the ones that want him to go nowhere near disability benefit and not cut anything at all. We got Angela Rayner this morning in the Telegraph talking about, you know, taxing more people who have actually bothered to save money over the course of the last few years. I mean, the whole thing is this sort of clattering train that seems to be heading into a siding somewhere.
So all those responsible people who worked hard, weren't state dependent, have made a few bob, put it aside and living off it, those are the people who are being absolutely squeezed and persecuted. And as you say, and those are the people who are paying for benefits. And the Labour Party, stuck in its own ways, squeeze, take the money off the people who've got it, couldn't grow the economy, couldn't grow it, you know, if their life depended on it, and then are worried now about benefit changes. That $5 billion benefit change is a drop in the ocean. Yeah. The paper is going to be going up by about $45 billion by the end of this Parliament, so that is nothing. So they're not actually cutting benefits, they are slightly cutting the increase with which it is growing. And you're right, there's huge turmoil within the Labour Party, various factions all pushing and pulling Starmer and Reeves in different directions.
Yeah. And finally, this Euro deal, which was done on amidst much fanfare on Monday, is already sort of unravelling. You know, we're told that, I mean, I was never a fan of this, the idea that e-gates and access to airports was suddenly going to be better and therefore everybody's going to vote Labour at the next election. You know, I mean, apparently it's not even going to happen until possibly next year. We've now got the roaming charges for people with phones when they go to Europe being blocked by the EU, so it's going to be more expensive to use your phone in Europe, despite this deal. We've got these young people coming over, we're now told probably with dependents as well, you know, people up to the age of 35. Nobody knows quite how long we're going to be stuck with them, or when they're going to go home, what they're going to do, where they're here, where, you know, where they're going to live, all of that stuff. It's all kind of smoke and mirrors, isn't it?
So Starmer's always wants to go back into the EU. He just couldn't say it. So we now have this, again, speaking with forked tongue, saying one thing, doing another. I call this as a salami way back into the EU, because we're going in slice by slice. And what you're saying now, we'll be taking rules from the EU, we'll be paying into the EU. Look at the aquaculture, look at the fisheries. But yesterday, because there was 2 hours in Parliament of the Prime Minister addressing the House about the sort of EU surrender deal that he's done, and I did ask the question as a former Secretary of State of the Department of Work and Pensions about the youth movement. About youth unemployment in this country is 14.2%, but if you look in Europe, youth unemployment is significantly higher. Spain, 26.4%, Sweden, 24.1%. So I can understand that the EU are wanting youth movement because they're pushing their youth unemployment into the UK. So I asked him, what impact assessment had he done on youth on his scheme on youth unemployment in the UK, particularly for white working class boys, and did he have a cap on the numbers of movement, none of which appear to have been done. Trust me, this will be a disaster for our young people. He is selling young Brits down the river.
He really is, and the rest of us are flowing straight behind them as well. You know, there's nobody saved by this. You know, there's no respite, it seems to me. Great to talk to you, Esther McVeigh. Thank you very much indeed. Former Minister for Common Sense, of course, still Tory MP. Bit of breaking news for you. In addition to inflation jumping to 3.5%, Ukrainian national Petro Pochinok, who's aged 34, has become the third man charged over the arson attacks on properties and a car linked to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. That's a statement from the Metropolitan Police. We saw yesterday the second man was charged in the case. He was a Romanian who was apparently born in Ukraine. He's a Romanian national. He's a model as well, similar to the first man who was charged. He's also a Ukrainian national. So it looks as though three people, all with connections to Ukraine, have now been charged with this business of an arson attack on properties and a car with intent to harm, which is quite serious. We'll bring you that, of course, as the case goes forward and as people appear in court. But given that it's now an active case, there's not a lot we can do to talk about it. People wonder sometimes why we can't talk about certain things. That's part of the law, and that's why we know what the law is, and we don't need to be told what it is by the Prime Minister, like he tried to do in Southport. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's get a voice note from Belinda.
Morning, Mike. Belinda here. Hope you're having a good start to the day. Great show as always. Just phoning up about this Lucy Connolly not getting her appeal again yesterday. But I was thinking that, you know, if she does come out in August, someone needs to approach her about writing a book about all this rubbish that she's gone through. But then again, she's going to have to be careful what she writes, I guess. Just a thought. Thanks, great show.
Belinda, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, it is ludicrous that Lucy Connolly is still in jail. You know, you can understand them wanting to teach her a lesson. You can understand them even holding her in custody between the time that she was arrested and between the time that she was then going to trial. But, you know, she's been treated literally like a mass murderer. You know, arrested, never allowed out on bail, kept in custody until the trial, told to plead guilty because that would lead to a lesser sentence, then stitched up by her own barrister and a judge who basically gave her the lengthiest sentence they could give her because she pleaded guilty to a very serious charge, then refusing her access to her only children when she wanted to go back and to see them, even though most prisoners on good behaviour certainly get allowed back on compassionate grounds to see their families, particularly if they've got children. And then yesterday, up before the appeal court, completely and utterly denied the opportunity to appeal on the basis of the rule of law, because the appeal court judges said it was not for them to make mitigating circumstances out of whatever it was that she had done. Absolutely ridiculous. Morning, Mike, says Warwick from Devon. Excellent out of the blocks to your show. Not only is Keith Starling barking mad, but we also have a barking migrant dog. Now, yeah, I know, ridiculous, isn't it? And on one from Jason in Market Deeping. On the subject of the small boats, do you think it's all the boats full of fighting-age males that landed this year came at once? We would then consider them as an invading army. Just a thought. Have a great day. Well, imagine if you did. Yeah, imagine if you've got 36,000 people suddenly turning up on the shores of the southeast of this country. I think you probably might think you might involve the army in dealing with that particular problem, wouldn't you? But instead they're coming in dribs and drabs, so that's all right then. 8:22.
think this is a landmark deal, which is going to help people in Britain through better jobs in Britain, through bringing down prices of the checkout, getting more money into people's pockets, and also through boosting the economy, boosting economic growth, which is so important to what we're trying to do as a government. So, yeah, I think this is really good news for Britain in terms of jobs, in terms of prices, and in terms of economic growth.
How is it going to create jobs?
Well, we know that this helps to boost trade with Europe. So there's an SPS agreement.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 8:24 is the time. Coming up, we've got much more to do. Nadine Dorries is going to join us a little bit later on in this hour. One from Richard, who's written a bit of a poem, a bit of a ditty here. He says, I rose this morning full of glee to hear what Mike has got for me. I've come back down with a bump, and now I've got the flipping hump. Well, I'm sorry about that. I mean, what can I do? I try to bring you as much entertainment as I possibly can, including, of course, the story about the dog who's been brought over with the asylum seekers on a small boat, or a large boat, whatever you like to call it, a dinghy certainly, and he's now being put in quarantine somewhere near Dover at our expense. Brilliant. AI, or Al from Watford. Mike, I think bringing the dog over is very cunning, as it will mean its owner won't be sent back on compassionate grounds, being separated from his dog. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they've got sort of a whole bunch of, what they might call compassion dogs or something. What do they call them? Rescue dogs or whatever, so that they give one to every migrant as they come over and say, this is the new thing. Mike, so we're going to lose lots more doctors because of the pension cap Raina wants. Does she not know history, says Maureen. No, I don't think she does know history. I don't think she knows much at all, actually. Let's talk, though, to our man who's written a big piece in The Sun today, Ross Clark, who's a columnist on page 10 today. He's talking about Brexit. Keir tried to end the Brexit debate, but he's put it firmly back on the agenda. And I'd have to say, I agree with you. It says Starmer's reset has backfired. Already, Ross, a very good morning to you. The whole business of the Euro deal is kind of beginning to unravel. You know, this nonsensical claim that, we'd all be up in arms with delight that we'd be able to go through e-gates with much more ease now than they used to be able to. Looks like that's not going to happen for at least another year anyway. It looks as though roaming charges are back for people who want to go to Europe as well, so you won't be getting any cheap phone deals. And now this business of allowing, young people to come to this country up to the age of 35 will probably mean that they'll bring dependents with them as well.
Yes, I mean, this just reminds us, doesn't it, of those long, painful years between 2016 and 2020, when the EU was sort of out to punish Britain in every way it possibly could, and the government then was sort of trying to resist it, trying to avoid becoming what Jacob Rees-Mogg memory called a vassal state.
Yes.
But, that's exactly where we are now after Starmer's deal. He's basically agreed for Britain to what he calls dynamic alignment with EU rules on food standards and so on, which basically reduces us to a rule taker. EU can make up whatever rules it likes, and it can come up with rules specifically designed to keep out UK exports from EU markets, and it will do that. And we have no recourse. We have no say in how these rules are going to be imposed. We're just going to have to swallow them, and
and we have no control over them either, right? Which is not taking back control, as far as I can see.
No, it gets even worse because, fishing, for example, if a future UK government decides to go back on this offer to keep UK waters open to EU fishermen till 2038, then that would trigger clauses, introducing punitive tariffs on all UK goods, not just fish, but all UK goods. You know, so Starmer has sort of done his best. Well, the EU has done its best, and Starmer has sort of meekly agreed to tie future governments, tie the hands of future governments to his appalling deal.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as you say in the piece, it hasn't, rather than kind of close off a period of Brexit kind of trauma that some people refer to it as, he's reopened all of those wounds, hasn't he? Because people are now having the same arguments about whether he's doing the right thing. You know, there are some people on the Labour side who are saying, actually, he's not going far enough. And an awful lot of the agreements that he's made are kind of what I would call gateway drugs to something much harder coming down the pike.
Yes, well, I mean, you look at the awfulness of this deal and you say, well, you know, could this be part of a strategy to put Britain in such an unfavourable relationship with the EU that actually full membership becomes a lesser evil?
Yes.
And, you know, there are plenty of people, and Keir Starmer may secretly be among them, whatever he says, who harbour this dream of rejoining the EU, have never accepted the result of the 2016 referendum, and this agreement will, you know, put wind in their sails.
No, completely.
On the other hand, just look what's happened to the Reform UK ratings in the polls. They take, you know, now leading the polls.
Yeah.
So, you know, no, sorry, Brexit is not settled, whatever Keir Starmer may agree.
I mean, like sort of the Alistair Campbells of this world going on about how, you know, everybody now knows that Brexit was a failure and this is why we now have to reset the whole agenda with the European Union and we have to get back on an even keel and start talking to them as equals, la-di-la-di-la. But that's not how it's working out. You know, that whole sham on Monday when Starmer had them all round to Downing Street and was operating with Ursula von der Leyen as if she was, you know, the Queen of the United Nations or something. You know, she's an unelected bureaucrat, the sort of person that people voted not to be ruled by in this country, and then now being ruled by her again.
Yeah, this is certainly no deal of equals. The EU has got what it wants, tying Britain into its regulatory orbit. And what have we got out of it? Well, as you said, you know, the e-gates thing, the idea we're all going to breeze through customs by using the e-gates, that transpires to mean very little. All the agreement says is that it won't be illegal for EU member states to let British citizens through their e-gates. It doesn't actually compel them.
And it never was anyway, was it?
No, and yeah, no, exactly. And then, you know, we've got things like roaming charges, which the UK government asked the EU just to the British phone users could be included in the EU rules which prevent roaming charges from one country to another. We're not getting that. So, you know, it's pretty thin gruel if you're a UK citizen. But, you know, the EU has got us exactly where it wants us.
Yeah, exactly right. And many people are now starting to ask the question about young people in this country, many of whom are finding it more difficult to get jobs, partly because the fact that there aren't many jobs and partly because of the government's fiscal policy on putting up national insurance for employers and also putting up the minimum wage. They're now going to be assailed by, you know, possibly tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of young people coming from abroad in Europe where unemployment's even higher.
Yes, I mean, maybe there will be a cap on the numbers allowed to come in. We don't know exactly how it's going to work. But yes, a youth mobility scheme, of course, will be of interest to low-income workers from Eastern Europe, exactly the people who were coming across when we were in the EU and helping to suppress wages for UK workers. So, you know, that sort of cheap labour is good news for wealthy people. If you want a nanny or a plumber, it's good news to have cheap labour from Eastern Europe. But if you are a nanny, if you are a plumber, then of course it's very different. You get a lot more competition from you know, cheap labour.
Yeah, and they all have to live somewhere. They all have to live somewhere, these people as well. We already have a shortage of housing, so I don't know how we're going to work that one out.
No, exactly. And when we Tony Blair opened our borders to workers from Eastern Europe 7 years before he had to, under new rules, by the way, what happened? We had these sort of backyard shanty towns in Laos, Southall, and even a roundabout in Peterborough, where migrants were living in these sort of insanitary conditions because there was nowhere for them to live. And Labour's sort of programme to build more homes is not exactly going anywhere at the moment. It's had no effect on house building whatsoever. And here we are opening the borders to more
yes, only a week after saying that we were shutting them and taking control of our immigration policy. But extraordinary times we live in. Ross, very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, Sun columnist today. On page 10, Keir tried to end the Brexit debate, but he's put it firmly back on the agenda, which of course he has, and not in a good way either. Starmer is a traitor, says Sue. He has an agenda to make us all subservient, import as many immigrants from anywhere and give them the vote so he can remain in power. He is a dictator. If I said what I would like to happen, I would be in Lucy's position. What I would like to happen, I guess. Good morning, Mike. This dreadful EU deal, says Christine in the Isle of Wight. Is there any way it can be stopped? Thank you. Well, we spoke to Bill Cash yesterday about that, or was it the day before? And he seemed to think there is a clause in a sovereignty document, a clause 38, I believe he said it was, in the House of Commons, and he's going to pursue that to see if there is some form of legal challenge that can be made. Similarly, we're going to speak to Nick Freeman this week, the lawyer who's going to get himself involved in the possibility of some kind of legal challenge. Let's meanwhile get a voice note from Sue.
Morning, Mike. Sue from Farnham here. Esther's right there, slice by slice, going back into the EU. I don't want to. And if people actually look, our country is being taken away from us, slice by slice. Just look at each county. Just look.
So you make a very good point, and I think a lot of people feel the same way, that, the country they once knew is no more. The place they grew up in has changed completely. The places they visit are not the same. Nothing is as it was. And why? And what for? And what was the point? That's a good question. We'd like that answered. 8:35, Stephen Wolfe coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:36. We're here until 10 o'clock, of course, until Julie Hartley-Brewer comes along. The breaking news this morning, inflation has jumped to 3.5% in April. Not unexpectedly. We said it was going to jump to about 3.3% yesterday, and we were only 0.2% out. It's gone up to 3.5%. Now, Rachel Reeves has declared herself to be disappointed in the way that the economy is going. Well, she's in charge of the bleeding thing. She should be more than disappointed. She should be absolutely distraught. And she should own up and say, it's all my fault, and I hereby resign, because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. 4 more years of this government, says Adrian in Birmingham. No to all Labour MPs, for the love of our country, for everyone and everything we hold dear. Get Starmer out. If he won't go, either defect to reform or resign your seat, and we, the electorate, will do the rest. You're all on notice anyway. Starmer is a lunatic, and enough is enough. Absolutely right. Stuart says, flip-flop Starmer nearly sees he agrees when he's trying to say he couldn't disagree more about overturning Brexit on the YouTube trailer. The man is so disingenuous and a complete and utter liar. Well, as I've said before, I've never seen such vitriol directed at a Prime Minister or indeed at an entire government and an entire party than I've seen with this lot. But with any luck, you'll be able to see why that is the case. Let's talk to Stephen Wolfe, who's here with us, because on the front page today of The Sun, an even more mad story about migrants than any other mad story about migrants. This time it's barking mad, they say, because we are now paying to give bed and board to an asylum-seeking dog. I kid you not. Stephen, I think we've reached peak migrant craziness here, haven't we?
I just think, if George Orwell had written a book, it would be like lies, dogs, and the stupidity of the elite class. Yeah. I mean, this is a story that no one will read and think it's actually possible to have in Britain. But then again, Mike, we've had a week where a one-leg disabled man has been tasered, beaten in a hospital. Yeah. We've had a woman denied her appeal from court because of a tweet. So the country now is looking at the state of our nation and saying everybody who's leading us is mad, and that's why you're having those people being so vitriolic towards members of Parliament.
Yeah, exactly right. Because, again, the other story that's going around this morning is this Egyptian people smuggler, the asylum seeker, who came here on a small boat of his own, then set up in what was, of course, a taxpayer-funded house, which, again, he shouldn't be in. He's making 12 million quid ferrying something like 3,000 to 4,000 migrants into the country over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. He's only one of probably dozens of these kind of people.
Well, yes. I mean, he's made a tidy profit there of just over around 100 million, I think, and he won't have been alone in doing that. We know that he'll have been the base for it here, linking in to the kingpins of this evil trade across the country and across Europe. So, and he's not the first, Mike. We've had stories about others that have been caught with just transporting in 50, 60. It's just the numbers that were involved in this. Yeah. And all it goes to show is that as we bring more people in, this is a cohesive effort by people who don't deserve to be here to use any means that they can and to sponge off the state and use the state, because we're stupidly allowing them to do so, to make vast profits on the back of it. That's how gangs work. That's how people smugglers work. But it's not how the thought processes of our civil servants and government work. They're in the past. They're the people smugglers are way in the future.
Yeah. Somebody pointed out today the dog story is completely and utterly bonkers. However, if any of these characters get the view that if you come over with a pet, you've got more chance of staying because they won't deport you because you've got a right to stay with your pet. You can see that happening as well.
Absolutely. They're not barking up the wrong tree there, are they, Mike? Let's be frank about that.
No.
They fully understand how to game the system. And when they can game the system, they also have non-governmental organisations who are paid for through a charitable status, either through the actual national government or mainly through the taxpayers paying their council tax into councils who pay them money to help them advise how to do the last stages. And then they get legal aid if they want to challenge it even further. So these people are on a win-win-win. This is a triple win for them. It's a lottery every day. And the government and we, the people, are the ones losing out financially.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Stephen, good to talk to you, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity there, Stephen Wolfe. We're going to talk in a moment to William Yarwood. Let's get a quick voice note, though, for a man on Lucy Connolly.
Morning, Mike. Anna, sorry. If I were Lucy Connolly, and I thank every god known to mankind that I'm not, because she's been treated appallingly. Lucy, if you're listening to this, when you get out, stand as an MP in Starmer's area and destroy him, because I promise you faithfully, there's not a woman out here that wouldn't vote for you, girl. Take care, Mike. Bye-bye.
And thank you very much for that. I'm sure Lucy will appreciate it. I hope she is listening to this show because there's an awful lot of support for her because people know what's right and what's wrong in this country. They know what fairness means and they know what fairness should look like, and this is not fair. Everybody can see that, apart from the government, apart from Keir Starmer, who's not across the detail of the case. Let's talk to William Yarwood now, though, from Taxpayers Alliance, because, William, a very good morning to you. we're now not content with paying a load of money out for migrants coming here, putting them up in hotels, moving them into houses, moving them into, single occupancy units. We're now paying for their dogs.
Yeah, I sort of want to laugh, Mike, but I also want to cry and scream at the same time, right? It's this weird, a mix of emotions I have about this.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not going to attack the dog. It's not the dog's fault, right? But it's quite clear that, migrants often don't bother coming over with their families. Most of them are just young men. But now they're coming over with their dogs instead, so that basically they can have, as you mentioned earlier with Stephen, the right to stay with their pet, and somehow that will, help their asylum claim, which just proves to you how mental and broken Britain's asylum system is now that, we're letting dogs in and then giving that as an excuse for them to stay here for as long as they please.
It really does. And, of course, one of the things that we will know over the course of the next few weeks and months is that, more and more will come. Thousands more will come. I think the figure's 36,000 since Labour got in July of last year. That number's going to increase by several thousand over the next weeks and months, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the cost of taxpayers are just going to go up. And I think it costs about £42,000 a year to house a migrant in a hotel, which is more than the average salary in the UK, by the way, Mike. 42 grand is actually quite a decent whack to enjoy. But, the dog thing is specifically quite... it could possibly set a dangerous precedent, because if one case happens whereby an asylum seeker gets to stay in the country because their dog's here also, people in Calais are going to be thinking, oh, well, I need to go get a dog or a pet of some kind, bring it over, and then use it as an anchor to stay in the UK.
Yeah.
But, our asylum system's so broken that actually I could foresee happening, Mike.
You absolutely could, because they're very smart, these people. And as I said, I mentioned to Stephen Wolfe there, this guy that's been sent down for 25 years, who was found to be a sort of big-time player in the people smuggling racket. He's an Egyptian, came here a couple of years ago and set up a shop and started sort of selling tickets, if you like, to people who wanted to come to this country illegally. But, of course, he was also living in a house that was paid for by the taxpayer.
Yeah, indeed, lots of them do, Mike. Social housing's a big problem in this country, costing taxpayers billions of pounds every single year. And it's not just illegal migrants; it's economically inactive migrants living in big cities, in primetime areas where people like myself, young professionals, would like to live, Mike, but can't do because it's been given to people who shouldn't be here in the first place and are economically inactive. While I have to pay a decent amount of rent and pay taxes so that these people can enjoy their lives. So yeah, the social contract's completely broken in this country for that kind of stuff, and the asylum system is completely broken as well, but by the fact that migrants in Calais are now going to be thinking, oh, I need to get myself a cat or a dog or a bloody goldfish so that they can come over to the UK and get anchored in the UK in that way. But yeah, it's like I said, I want to laugh, Mike, I want to laugh, but actually what I want to do is tear my hair out and scream.
I know. I absolutely sympathise with you 100%. William Norwood, thank you very much indeed for the Taxpayers Alliance. Coming up next, we're going to speak to Nadine Dorries, former Culture Secretary. We'll get her take on the BBC and Gary Lineker.
Does is it underlines the real problem we have with our judiciary, and Kev, I've been banging on about this for ages, that it's not the European Court of Human Rights that's the problem in getting rid of asylum seekers, it's the bloody lawyers, it's the judiciary. And the same thing applies here. My suspicion is Keir Starmer would have been a bit happier if she had had her appeal upheld.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, yeah.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 8:48 is the time. We're coming up to the final hour of the show. Steve Reed's going to be here. A very rare appearance by a government minister on this show. He's going to be talking to us about what he wants to do about Thames Water, but we'll be asking him a few questions about this Euro deal and about many other things besides. The economy crashing, inflation jumping to 3.5% in April, as we predicted yesterday. Nadine Dorries is here, though, former Culture Secretary. Nadine, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Great to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. Fresh from that great column in the Mail yesterday. You were opining about the problem with the BBC and Gary Lineker, and you're in a good position to do so because of some of the interaction you had with Tim Davie and others when you were in that role at Culture Secretary. Tell us what you make of it all.
Gosh, well, as I wrote in the column yesterday, I think what we're beginning to see and what is becoming very obvious is there is a plan, a strategy within the BBC when it comes to their celebrities and their stars, their national treasures, how they manage them and what happens as a result of that process, which is quite toxic and I think quite sinister.
Yeah.
So I think you best see it in Stacey Solomon, who, as we know, had this ferocious outburst last week because she didn't win a BAFTA.
Right.
Now, her defence is she was complaining on behalf of her team. Well, you and I both know that anybody in television or in the arts, indeed, who is a significant figure has a team of people behind them. And I think that's just a veneer. So what happens is the BBC decide this is going to be our star. We're going to aim this person at this audience. With Russell Brand, he was a comedian, it was at young people. With Stacey Solomon, it's at young mums. At Gary Lineker, it was with football dads and centrist dads and so on. They build these people up. And what happens is that the authority and the power transfers from the BBC to that individual. And the BBC create monsters, and they have no control over these people. Hugh Edwards, the national treasure who was covering every state occasion from funerals, coronations and general elections. Jimmy Savile, did we learn nothing from Jimmy Savile?
Yeah.
It's these people get built up and they become some of Jimmy Savile, cases in point, they come into these, turn into celebrity monsters.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a word, it's Bridezilla for brides. What is it for these celebrities?
Right.
Celebrityzilla or something.
Something like
and
that.
That's what happens, and that's what has to stop. And one of the things the conversations I used to have with Tim Davie at the BBC, where you've got to step up and find a new model for the licence fee, because it's a regressive tax that hits the poor and the rich, and it cannot continue because you're losing 500,000 taxpayers a year. But what I also said was this celebrity culture is toxic. Paying people £1.3 million a year out of that licence fee, out of people's pockets, is not a model that can continue. And I think, I said at the opening of my column, it's a car crash that we were waiting to happen, and it's happened. And that's where we are. And I don't think they can continue. They cannot continue after all that we've learned recently, that to build these people up, to pay them huge sums of money, to wrap the protective cloak of the BBC around them, to market them as something we know they aren't as individuals, and then watch as it implodes, as we've seen now so many times.
Exactly right. But is it because the BBC don't have the wherewithal, do you think, to deal with these characters once they get so big? Or is it just that they're frightened of doing it? Do they need to have a sort of sea change in the way that they manage these people, I suppose, is the question.
So, look, one of the comments I made is that Tim Davie, who is the Director General of the BBC, is a good man. He's incredibly well respected across the industry, but he's trying to run an absolutely monolithic organisation, which is steeped in a deeply ingrained left-wing culture, which I think is almost impossible to manage or to change. So that's the first point. The second point is, as I say, the BBC have to stop creating stars, and there are ways of doing this. So instead of having, an iconic figure like Hugh Edwards, who, was arrested for viewing indecent images of child pornography at his home, it was far worse than we knew. And that's because BBC directors covered it up. because we didn't know this until the day he was arrested, because they were protecting their brand.
Yes.
They have to stop that. They don't have a brand around celebrities. So instead of having one Hugh Edwards, have 4 presenters. You know, don't make these individuals, don't pay these individuals huge money. A, because it's inappropriate, because it's our money, it's a tax. Don't pay them huge salaries, but also don't invest such huge amounts on a small number of individuals. And, you know, it's there to be seen. It's there. It's not like we're talking about one person. This isn't just Gary Lineker. This is Russell Brand. This is Hugh Edwards. This is, you know, a number. It was the Stacey Solomon outburst. There have been a number of people that this has happened to. It's got to stop. It's a model that doesn't work in the modern age of transparency, 24-hour rolling news, the internet. You know, it just doesn't work in today's digital world.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you're looking around at the sort of the TV sort of landscape, if you like. You know, Sky News talking about coming off regular TV and just being an online channel only. ITN and ITV all over the newspapers this morning because they're having a massive cull of staff. I think 300 odd people under threat of redundancy at ITV. They're moving all the shows around. You know, it's a changing marketplace, and the BBC alone seems to be not really aware of it.
I find this bizarre, you know, because when I was a culture secretary, which was in 22, I think I stood down 23. It was, I was saying this to people like Tim Davie and ITV and Comcast, who owned Sky at the time. You know, the conversations I found exasperating where when I said this is a rapidly changing digital landscape. You're like dinosaurs walking into the oblivion. You have to change. You have to step up and change and move as fast as the digital landscape is. But it was almost like they didn't actually believe it was ever going to happen. It was like the BBC didn't believe people would stop paying the licence fee. Now, I was using, this is an analogy I couldn't really use because it was just my own home where I had 3 daughters in their 20s and early 30s. Right. Not one of them sits down in front of the television and puts an analog channel on. It wouldn't enter their brains to put BBC One, 2 or ITV on when they sit down in front of a television. They just think differently. They consume their news differently. You know, they consume their entertainment differently to our generation did. So it was stating the bleeding obvious to me, to those individuals. But there was almost this glazed. Was it too much for them to comprehend? Was it too much of a mission to change from their analog focus towards digital? Was it too frightening a world for them to step into? Did they not understand it? But what's happening today with ITV and Sky and other channels, and indeed we went through it at Talk. When I was at Talk, we went through exactly the same process, but Talk did, although they made the error of stepping into the analog world, they did change pretty rapidly and got with it. And yet these big giants seem to be taking far longer than Talk did, and indeed many other broadcasters do. You've embraced the online world.
Yeah, exactly right, because I think they don't want it to be there. I mean, I remember working in newspapers way back when suddenly the internet was a thing. And when I was working for the Daily Mirror and Piers Morgan was there, and we didn't want to have an online presence. It was like people were arguing against it, going, well, hang on a minute, people aren't going to buy the paper. What are you doing? And then they would the first thing they did was they put the actual pages of the paper on a screen so you could look at them, but you couldn't update them. And you know, it was kind of mad, you know. And it took probably a good 5 or 6 years before people went, we're actually going to have a website that updates itself so that people who want to log onto it, who don't want to buy the paper, can see it. And newspapers are still struggling with that now.
But, you know, I would say the Daily Mail and the Times have been the most successful at this because they've embraced the fact that many people are now consuming their news differently and will sit in front of their computer and want to click onto their newspaper rather than get in a car and go and drive down to the supermarket or to the local shop to buy it. And I think, but it's a hard process for them to undertake. It's an expensive process, but it's a process of survival. If they don't do this, how do they survive? And I think the Daily Mail and the Times newspaper, 2 of the most successful online newspapers who both charge for content, by the way. And that's, you know, you go and buy your newspaper. You used to buy your newspaper from a supermarket or a petrol station or wherever, newsagents. And people seem to feel there was also an audience problem where people seem to feel if they were going online, they didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I think that change is happening in the minds of the consumer. They are now realising if they want quality journalism, they are going to have to pay for it. But, you know, you mentioned Piers Morgan. I think we have to kind of acknowledge that, you know, Piers was one of the first people to realise that this, you know, he moved his show completely uncensored onto YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, how X number of million viewers he has now watching his programme on YouTube. But there are certainly more people watching Piers Morgan's programme on YouTube than I believe would ever be tuning in to an analogue station like BBC One, 2 or 3 on an analogue channel.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, we'll continue to watch and learn and evolve, I suppose, because that's what we do. It's what we're supposed to do as human beings. Unfortunately, under Labour, we seem to be going backwards, but that's another story.
That is the story.
Good to see you, Nadine. Thank you very much indeed. Nadine Dorries there. Of course, The Sun have also got the Sun Club as well that you can log on to now and pay for. Because I think the fact is, if you don't pay for it, it's probably not worth anything. That's kind of what we say. But of course, you know, in terms of newspapers, that's a very different kettle of fish to what we do here at Talk. Because you don't have to pay for this. This is absolutely free to you. And you can enjoy it 24/7, all the time. 0344 499 1000. This from With a Woo Woo. When your boiler goes kaput and a Welsh plumber says, yeah, I can get you in 4 days, he's actually telling the truth, even if you leave straight away. Driving at 5 miles an hour, or possibly 10 miles an hour when he really puts his foot down. Absolutely incredible stuff. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk to Steve Reid, Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Government Minister coming on. Neil O'Brien's here as well, Shadow Education Minister. This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of £70.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. It is, of course, Wednesday, the 21st of May. We'll be checking in with Prime Minister's questions a little bit later on today in the House of Commons, where Keir Starmer will no doubt be put through his paces again by Kerry Badenoch, who will try and get him to explain exactly why this deal with the European Union is in fact worth the paper it is written on. Coming up, we'll also speak to Steve Reid, MP, in this hour. He's the Environment Secretary. John Redwood is here, Sir John Redwood, former Government Minister. Neil O'Brien, the Shadow Education Minister is here. It's a big hour for us coming up. We've got big news for you as well, of course. Inflation, the breaking news on that, is that it's jumped to 3.5% in April, higher than it was expected to go. We thought yesterday it was going to go to about 3.3, but it's 3.5%. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has said that she's disappointed. Well, you should try being on the other end of some of the measures that she's brought in, and I think disappointed would be a very unusually calm word to use. Most people are incandescent with rage here this morning, not least because Lucy Connolly is still locked up in prison, a place where she does not need to be. She had her appeal turned down yesterday. She still has not been able to go home and see her 12-year-old daughter or her husband, who she cares for, because he's got cancer. He's suffering from that disease at the moment, and she has continually been treated as though she's one of the worst criminals that this country has ever seen. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson this morning on the front page of the Daily Mail saying that Starmer is turning Britain into a police state. And perhaps the craziest story of the year so far is that we haven't just got illegal migrants coming across the channel now. We've got illegal migrant dogs. Barking mad is what it says on the front page of The Sun. Taxpayers are forking out thousands of pounds to put up a dog that crossed the channel in a packed dinghy. Jules says this, presumably migrant dogs get provided with free veterinary services. Meanwhile, our lonely and now cold old age pensioners live a life of isolation because they cannot afford a pet because of the vet's fees. Vets are very expensive. This dog is living taxpayers' money, thank you very much indeed, in a kennel somewhere on the Kent coast. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Neville.
Hi, Mike. Morning. It's Neville from West Midlands. Just, good show as usual. Very sad news on the National Front. Because of Starmer, our duplicitous Prime Minister, he was always banging on about stopping the boats, and we didn't know what he meant was stopping the fishing fleet taken to the seas. Sad, sad, sad. Talk to you again, Mike. Bye.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, Neville speaks for an awful lot of people. The fishing fleets of this country are probably to be no more, thanks to the sellout by Keir Starmer on Monday to Ursula von der Leyen and, of course, the European Union. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Just to make matters worse, of course, in case you were wondering whether you might be able to keep some of the money that you actually happen to have in a bank account, Angela Rayner's got a secret plan to tax savers, according to Daily Telegraph. A leaked memo reveals a split at the heart of government between the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. Basically, she wants them to target pensions and shares rather than cut public services. Income tax and corporate levies would also be changed under an alternative proposal. You know, once you get these lefties in charge, they never stop asking for more money because they don't know any other way of getting it. Let's talk now to Neil O'Brien, MP, Shadow Education Minister. Neil, very good morning to you.
Morning.
It's been another tumultuous week, has it not, for this Labour government? It seems as though they've done a deal with the European Union which sells everything back to them that we were supposed to have taken off them back in 2016 when we had the referendum as such, and it seems as though it's already unravelling. The e-gates that they made so much of on Monday, it turns out we probably won't have those open until next year at the very earliest. It looks as though roaming charges are back for people travelling to Europe, and this scheme where people under 35 are going to be able to come here may also include their dependents.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely unbelievable. So we have given away our fishermen for the next 12 years. We have agreed to be a total rule taker on everything to do with food and agriculture. So we're basically locked in the back of the car and we will go wherever they tell us to. We're going to be paying money in again. We've agreed to even more immigration, and in return for it, I'm not sure there actually is any progress at all on this e-gates thing at all. It's just that we'll have more talks about it in the future. Meanwhile, the EU are moving towards a system, perfectly reasonably in a way, of biometric entry and exit, which potentially will cause quite bad queues, and we don't seem to have got any reassurances on that either. So we've basically got nothing but some empty promises of talks in response to giving away loads and loads of things. I mean, it's just an appalling negotiation. It's as bad as the Chagos thing all over again, where we are managing to spend money, give taxpayers money to another country for the privilege of having our own territory taken away from us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, how can you have negotiated something like that?
Is it possible this is also kind of a gateway to more rights being given back to the European Union as well? Because, you know, an awful lot of the early stage negotiations leave quite a lot of room for giving more back to the EU or getting even closer to them. And certainly there's a lot of people on the Remain side who are saying now that Starmer should have gone further and that he should go further.
That's the entire point of the exercise. I mean, Starmer, everyone remembers, was the #1 advocate in Parliament for staying in. Even on the Labour side, he was the most passionate for trying to stop Brexit. And the truth is that he is inching us along here. He doesn't believe in very many things, the Prime Minister, but the two things he believes in, above all else, are human rights law and the rights of all kinds of undesirable people, be they criminals or migrants, and the European Union. Those are his two lodestars. And yeah, so he's given away a load of stuff this week in return for nothing, but that's just the start. The whole point of this is to get us on a path back into re-entry. He never thought we should leave. He tried to stop us leaving, and now he's gradually, piece by piece, taking us back in. And you know what the argument will be. It will be, well, you know, we're already signed up to so much of this stuff, we might as well have a seat at the table. Why don't we just rejoin? That's what's coming next. Everyone can see it.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's have a quick look at what he said yesterday. He went to a Lidl's, by the way, to talk about how beneficial this deal was going to be.
The important thing to remember is it's bills down and jobs up. That will make a big difference to you and your customers. Getting rid of the red tape, getting rid of the bureaucracy, and bringing the price of food in particular down. But you do get quite a regular number of people who live locally who will shop in their local shops.
I agree, because I grew up around here as well. So
where did you grow up?
Next to King's Cross.
Oh yeah.
We don't have to queue up to go to EU anymore.
No, this is good. The e-gates. This is the bit that most people will feel the impact of first. Getting rid of the problems with e-gates, getting off the plane and have to wait in a queue, particularly when we didn't have to wait. Not so long ago. And it's so much better to be here with you than it is in Parliament. Yeah. It's the people that it really impacts. Thank you for your time. Really good to see you, and thanks for what you do.
People listening to this show this morning, Neil, have become very angry, more so than I've ever seen them, I think, because of the continuation of untruths, let's be charitable, shall we, that Keir Starmer utters on a daily basis. I mean, he's talking about bills coming down, he's talking about jobs going up. Neither one of those things is happening. We've got inflation today jumping to 3.5%. Nobody is feeling as if he's putting more money into their pockets. Nobody tells me that the prices are coming down, and nobody tells me that there's more jobs out there.
Well, that's because there aren't. I mean, so everything he said there was wrong. So unemployment is going up, and we now know that prices are going up. There's a surprise ballooning of inflation. So the government inherited a situation where inflation was bang on target, and now, entirely because of things that they've done, by increasing borrowing to record levels and increasing tax to record levels, they were warned this would have an inflationary impact, and it now has done, and people are feeling that in terms of the cost of living. So the alarming thing is the bringing together of higher inflation, higher unemployment and a stagnating economy, and yet it's not really that surprising. This is what happens when you do tax and borrowing at record levels, and it is alarming that their response to it is to look for even more ways to raise tax. I mean, I think personally the most astonishing thing about all of this is that you have a Labour government come in, and their big tax increase, the people who really take the brunt of it, is on the lowest paid workers by increasing national insurance for people at the bottom end. So the big losers are those, particularly women, who work on the lowest incomes. They are the biggest losers. Unbelievable, really, that a Labour government, notionally a Labour government, should have chosen that of all the things to do. And so, you know, the Chancellor says it's disappointing. Well, it is the result of her decisions. She should take some responsibility for this. I mean, it's her doing. So, you know, I slightly despair of where we're going with all this. I feel like we're getting into a doom loop where higher taxes cause the economy to stagnate, and the answer is even higher taxes. And we're just going round and round in a circle of decline.
And now that we've seen Angela Rayner, who wants to tax even more of the money that people have actually saved all of their lives, you know, people will start to get quite alarmed about it.
No, I think for a lot of people it is really tough. If you are, for example, a poorer pensioner, and we know there's something like 800,000 pensioners who are below the government's own poverty line and yet not eligible for pension credit. And so they're taking this huge income hit from the end of the winter fuel payment. And there's just no way of them compensating that. They're just worse off, and it is really tough for them. And now they're seeing that the prices in the shops are going up as well. It's just really rough for a lot of these people, and the lower incomes particularly.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Neil O'Brien, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Education Minister speaking there. Can you please interrupt your Labour guest every time he talks about the previous government, says Ian in Wales. It's time they started taking responsibility for what they are doing now. Well, I think they can not really still rest on those laurels. They can't say we inherited blah, blah, whatever, because they've been in government nearly a year. Let's get a voice note from Adam.
Good morning, Mike. A note on the dog that's come over. It's called Rover because there is a company called Avon who make dinghies, and one of their models is called Rover. And a quick note on comedy Keir Starmer. I think he is deliberately running this country into the ground for his paymasters. Listening to your show for years, first time caller. Great, love it. Adam in Southend.
Adam in Southend, good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Here's one from Susan. It says, morning, Mike. Please can you place a loud trigger warning before you launch videos of the Prime Minister? I've just lost my breakfast and his extreme gaslighting gives me tension headaches. He's ruined my day already. Listen, I have to look at it all day. This is the thing. People say I'm obsessed with him. You know, the point is he's the Prime Minister of this country and he's wrecking it. We're going to speak to Steve Reid coming up. He's the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. We'll see what he's got to say about the price of goods and inflation jumping to 3.5% in April. This is Talk.
I think this is a landmark deal, which is going to help people in Britain through better jobs in Britain, through bringing down prices of the checkout, getting more money in people's pockets, and also through boosting the economy, boosting economic growth, which is so important to what we're trying to do as a government. So, yeah, I think this is really good news for Britain in terms of jobs, in terms of prices, and in terms of economic growth.
How is it going to create jobs?
Well, we know that this helps to boost trade with Europe. So there's an SPS agreement.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to nearly 17 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Shane from Bedford says, sending Starmer to do a deal reminds me of when Blackadder sent Baldrick out to buy a turnip. When he came back with a giant turnip that had cost £400,000, Blackadder asked how he had managed to find a turnip for £400,000, and Baldrick said, I had to haggle. Baldrick, Starmer needs to go. All the best from Shane in Bradford. That's a pretty good summation of what a lot of people are saying this morning. We're going to speak now, though, to Steve Reid, MP, Environment Secretary, of course, as well, in charge of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Steve, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Good to be with you.
Nice to see you. Sorry about the rain. I didn't know it was going to be raining today, but of course, bank holiday's coming up. We've just start with inflation, shall we? Yeah. Inflation jumped to 3.5%, a little bit higher than we thought it would be. Rachel Reeves says she's disappointed. Yeah. A lot of people are saying to me that this is going to make their lives even more miserable. Keir Starmer keeps saying he's putting money back into the pockets of working people, but nobody's seeing any money being put back.
Well, Rachel's right. You know, I'm not going to hide from the fact these are disappointing.
these are disappointing figures. I know how much people are really hurting with the cost of living crisis that we inherited from the previous government, but nobody said we could fix all of those problems overnight. And if you look at the situation in the round, we've now had for 4 months in a row interest rates going down. That's helping people with their mortgages. We put up the national minimum wage, very popular change. It's put £1,400 into the pockets of some of the poorest paid people in our economy. And of course we had the figures earlier this year showing that for the first quarter the economy here in the UK was growing faster than in any of the other 7 biggest economies on the planet. And of course growing the economy means more jobs, more investment, higher wages. So I know people aren't feeling the changes now, but things are moving in the right direction, and in the round we're starting to see the change we need to see.
But the problem for a lot of people is that this is a result directly in April, the inflation going up, of national insurance prices, national insurance increases for companies, national insurance increases for employees as well. And therefore, you know, this is only going to get worse, isn't it? You know, as more and more companies start to say they've got less money to play with, they're not able to hire more people. You know, there's a crisis in employment for young people in this country. You know, when are we going to? How long before we can see some kind of benefit then?
Well, there are many factors at play, to be honest. Energy prices are projected to go down over the next few months. That will be very, very welcome by people who are sick of seeing their bills going up. But the OBR, which is the organisation that oversees projections on inflation, are saying that inflation will be back down to 2% by the end of the year. So we are on the right path. We're all disappointed to see the figures go up today. We know people are hurting with the cost of living crisis. But as I said, reductions in mortgage rates, increases in the national minimum wage, and the economy finally growing after it flatlined for over a decade. All of this is good news. And if you look at it in the round, then we're moving in the right direction. But nobody could ever fix everything all in one go.
The problem is, though, Steve, people are very angry on this show this morning, not just because of the economic situation, but because of things like Lucy Connolly still being locked up. You know, there's a sense that, you know, whenever Keir Starmer makes a statement, he's trying to make out that everything's going great. You know, he was in Lidl's yesterday telling us all that, you know, jobs are up, bills are down. You know, and people say that's not actually what's happening. And I think there's a disingenuousness about it that people are getting a little bit fed up with. I take your point that, you know, things may get better. The OBR might be right this time, they might not be. But people are really feeling that this country is in a sort of downward spiral and there's nothing really much to cheer them up with.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope, Mike, you don't feel that I'm pretending things aren't really hard for people right now, because I recognise that. Of course I recognise that. But just over the last 2 weeks, you know, we've signed 3 major trade deals with the European Union, with India, with the United States. That means more of our goods flowing across the border, putting money into British businesses, allowing them to create new jobs, allowing them to invest. All of that surely has to be good. And, you know, it does take time to fix everything, but I've been out on the media round talking to, you know, shows like yours this morning. We're talking about record levels of criminal investigations and prosecutions against the water bosses who polluted all of our waterways. Now, you can't fix that pollution overnight because we had record levels of sewage in our rivers, lakes and seas just last year, but we're not going to let the water companies profit from pollution in the way that they did under the previous government. We've secured £104 billion of private sector investment, which will slash the amount of pollution going into our waterways over the next few years. So I know people don't see that straight away, but we've put the things in place so that there will be improvement, and people should still feel hope. And that's not to detract from our disappointment with the inflation figures today.
Sure, people will welcome that. If you can clean up the rivers and you clean up the pollution in the seas, people will say that's a good thing. And I'll be very happy to congratulate the Labour government on anything that they do which is a benefit to the country. But, you know, you talk about the trade deals. The trade deal that was done on Monday would appear to be not quite as sold. You know, a lot of people very upset that the fishing industry in this country is more or less going to be closed off as a result of it, because you've given fishing rights to French and Spanish fishermen and fishermen from Europe over the next 12 years. A lot of people in the fishing business are telling me they won't be able to survive.
Well, that's not quite true, actually, and the Scottish Salmon Organisation have welcomed the changes, and salmon, of course, are a major fish export.
They're not really fish. They're not fishermen, Steve, are they? They're salmon producers who are more than likely farming those salmon.
Well, they're part of the sector, and if you look at the deal that we secured for fishing, they lose absolutely nothing, despite the EU saying that they wanted more access to UK territorial waters, despite the EU saying they wanted more access to our fishing quotas. They didn't get a single thing more in that sense, but 70% of the fish that British fishers catch out in the seas gets exported to Europe. Previously, there were barriers to that. Now, there are not barriers to that. They'll be able to export that fish, get more money in their bank accounts quickly. And whereas before all of those checks at the border meant a lot of the fish rotted, so the fishermen got nothing for what they were catching, now the trade will flow quickly across the border, all of it getting to supermarket shelves, and that means more money in the bank accounts and pockets of our fishers out at sea.
Well, that's a very different story to what the fishers out at sea are telling me. But, you know, you maybe should talk to some of them and see what they have to say about it, because they were hoping with the renegotiation...
Oh, no, I have been talking to them. I spoke to them yesterday.
Well, they were hoping... Well, you've been talking to industries, though. You've not been talking to the individuals who actually go out on the sea and see every single day how many foreign fishermen are actually out there taking their fish out of their mouths, literally. Yeah. And so what they're saying is that, you know, they were hoping for a better deal when it was renegotiated, because it was up for renegotiation next year, but they say now that the deal is worse.
Well, I'm going out on a trawler in just a few days' time, as it happens, to get it directly from what people have got to say. But as I said, can't be any wetter than it is here today, to be honest. But as I said, our fishers have lost absolutely nothing, and they've gained a lot in terms of what and how they can export it into Europe. There are some things that are currently banned from being exported to Europe. Now they can be, particularly in the shellfish sector of the fishing industry. So they've lost nothing, and they're gaining quite a bit. I know it's not everything they wanted. That's in the way of negotiations. But we didn't negotiate anything away.
What about the business of jobs coming to this country as a result of this deal that you've done with the EU? Because you said yourself that the British economy is growing faster than most other economies, and it certainly is doing a lot better than most European economies. And the European Union, up until recently, has been on a kind of downward slope itself, you know, because lots of different political changes in Europe, lots of different problems affecting all of their economies. Why cosy up more to the European Union now when it seems to be at a sort of weak ebb?
Well, it's the biggest market on the planet, and it's right on our doorstep. The English Channel isn't that wide, and if we can get our goods moving across the Channel, that's more money for British businesses. I'll give you an example of this. So, since 2018, British food and drink exports to the European Union declined by 21%. That's over a fifth. That's hundreds of millions of pounds lost to our economy, lost to food and drink businesses. We've seen cheese manufacturers close down because they couldn't export their goods to Europe anymore. Now they can. Those businesses will thrive. They can sell into the biggest market on the planet. But we're also doing trade deals with the likes of India, the fastest growing economy on the planet, the United States, our major trading partner. So we're looking all over the world for these trade deals because it brings investment and jobs to the UK, and that's what our focus will always be on.
But a lot of the investment and jobs is going to be for foreign workers, isn't it? Because you're going to invite Indian companies to employ... Yes, you're going to invite Indian companies to employ Indian workers here. They won't pay national insurance. You're going to invite people under the age of 35 to come here from Europe, and they may be able to bring their dependents with them. What do you mean, no? Those are both things that you've announced that you're doing.
Well, I'll give you an example from the area that I'm responsible for. So we were talking about the situation with sewage leaking into our rivers and into the sea. That's because our sewage pipes are in such an appalling state of disrepair. We've secured £104 billion with a B, £1 billion worth of investment, private sector investment, to fix all of those sewers. That is jobs in every single part of this country that will be done by British people, puts money in their pockets, gives them secure employment for many, many years to come, and it fixes the problem of sewage going into our rivers and our lakes and our seas.
Yeah.
All of that's good. It's good for the economy, it's good for the environment, it's good for Britain.
But who's investing £106 billion?
104 billion. It's private sector companies that are doing the investment. Yeah, 104 billion over 5 years. That's the biggest amount of money, by the way, ever in history invested in our water sector.
And who's going to fix the pipes? Have we got a load of people sitting around who know how to fix pipes that aren't currently employed?
Well, that's why we're setting up a new training academy to make sure that we can get British people who are currently not working, train them up and get them to work doing that. It's good for them, good for the economy, good for Britain.
Yeah, but you have to admit, you're still bringing in a load of Indian workers and you're still bringing in a load of European people under the age of 35 to do jobs that British people could be doing, right? Are you saying that's not true?
That isn't true. No. it isn't true. What's happening, and it happens with other trade deals as well, companies that invest here and open up here can, for a short period of time, bring workers from their home country to help set up the business and get it established. Then they go back again, and the vast majority of jobs will be for British people here at home. More jobs, more investment, that is what we want to see. And the Youth Experience Programme is just to give young people, they'll mostly be in their 20s, it will be capped, the chance to go and visit and work in Europe for a couple of years, learn a foreign language, and for some young Europeans to come here for a limited period of time. It's not the same as permanent immigration at all. I had the chance when I was younger to go to France, learn a little smattering of French. It stood me in good stead through my life. I want other young people to get that chance too.
All right. We've got to let you go there, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. Steve Reid, MP, Environment Secretary. It's all a bit woolly, that, isn't it? There is going to be a cap. We don't know what the cap is. There is going to be money coming in. We don't know when it's going to be used. You know, this is the problem with this Labour government. They say one thing and they don't necessarily do it. That's the problem. I don't have a massive problem with Steve Reid, and it's good that he came on the show. But we'd have to ask you what you make of it. Of course, let's talk to James Wright, who's a farmer and an agri-tech entrepreneur. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
What did you make of that then? Because there was several holes, I think, in some of the things that Steve Reid told us there.
Yeah, I mean, inflation's up, by another %. When the Conservatives left, it was down to its lowest level in a good while, and that means the average family's paying an extra £1,100 on household bills, and that is directly because of stuff that they've done.
Well, exactly right. I mean, he said that, they're not going to bring Indian workers in, and then he said that they were. And then he said, we're not going to bring young people in from Europe, and then he said that they were. And when they say that people come here and then they'll go home again, that's not generally our experience, is it? Once people get here, they tend to hang around.
Well, Steve Reid is a brilliant media performer. I mean, he's excellent at the doublespeak of politicians. He says one thing and then says another. So, but we've seen it with farming, and he's made all sorts of promises. Labour promised a new deal for farmers, and they came in with the family farm tax. They cut farm funding, and now we've got trade deals with both America and the EU, which is going to damage British farming. But did we hear about that? No, we didn't.
No, because it all sort of came rather out of the blue, didn't it? Because all of it that they're doing, it seems to me now, is to try and create the illusion of growth by saying that we're going to attract all of this investment. I would have liked to have had him on for longer so that I could have quizzed him more on exactly where this £104 billion is coming from, because my suspicion is that it won't be coming from private investment to fix the sewage problem in our waters. It will probably be coming from some wealth fund that's been set up by the government. So it'll be public money that's actually going in, because they like to call that investment when it really isn't.
Yeah, I mean, and we want to improve our rivers and we want to improve our seas. It's vitally important. My understanding is the people he's talking about, the water bosses that he's talking about getting prosecuted for failing to meet the standards, are being prosecuted under legislation brought in by the Conservatives. So it's not Labour's work that's done this. And yeah, exactly that. It will be our taxpayer money that's going in to fix all these problems, not the wealth funds and the private funds that he's talking about.
Yeah, and tell us what the latest scenario is with the farming dispute, because the last time I think you and I spoke, there was some conversations going on between the Department of the Environment and the farmers' unions, but they didn't seem to be going terribly well. What's happening at the moment?
Well, look, the latest is that the National Farmers Union put a proposal on that would mean that farmers would pay tax if they sold their farms. But if you passed your farm down to your family and they did not sell it, you would never pay the tax. And that's the way it should be, because we want to make sure that farmers, family farmers who carry on farming it, are protected, and investors and speculators are not. But the Treasury have said they're not interested. It would actually raise more money, but it's not about that. This is about ideology, a war on farming communities, not about raising money.
Yeah, so they've refused that suggestion, have they?
Yes, they refused that suggestion in a meeting between Tom Bradshaw, the president, and Rachel Reeves' team. They refused that suggestion. Yeah. And so we're at a stalemate. So currently, farmers are very busy. We've just finished calving and lambing. Now we're heading into harvest. So we can't come up to London. We're busy, right? Yeah. But this autumn, we'll be back, no doubt.
Yeah, because they won't have changed their minds by then. Who knows what the economy will be like by the time we get to autumn? You might want to stock up on some red diesel right now, because, we could have reached sort of Mad Max proportions by then.
Well, I mean, the problem is, Mike, is that all that stuff's coming down. You know, the prices of that stuff's coming down. It's coming down because economic activity is slowing down.
Yeah.
You know, national insurance rises are seeing businesses around me close. You know, I had a letter saying my tractor mechanic's going to have to put up his costs. You know, everything is increasing in value, and it just means there's less money to go around the economy. And I mean, they're putting the brakes on it. I mean, the economic growth increasing is because of the work of the last government. We're going to start to see that lag coming in now, and the next figures, I guarantee you, will be back down.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary stuff. Good to talk to you. James Wright, thank you very much indeed, farmer and agri-tech entrepreneur. It's 9:33. Let's get a voice note from Katie.
Hi, Mike. This government is trying to cause a suffrage movement in the UK. It doesn't listen to its electorate at all. It suppresses free speech. It doesn't act in the interest of the British people. Everyone is first apart from us.
Yeah, Katie, I certainly think a lot of people will agree with you. Susan says this: oh, Mike, is Steve Reid taking gaslighting lessons from Starmer? All the metrics were positive by last July, going into the right direction, and since Labour took over, they have reversed. Still blaming the last government for their obvious failures. The script is so boring. If I hear more money in working people's pockets one more time while my pockets are empty, I will have a nervous breakdown. Lies, lies and more lies, says Susan. And Steve says, so what is Steve Reid saying? People in the UK can't set up a business, so companies need to bust in hordes of people from other countries to set up businesses from off and near shore. What absolute rubbish. Well, this is the thing. I asked him about the European workers coming in. He said, oh, it's just going to be for an experience. Well, everybody knows that's not true. And then I asked him about the Indian workers. Oh, they're just going to come for a short time, then they go home again. Ian in Blockswitch says, next time that Steve Reid is on, ask him if he's ever visited the planet Earth. Delusional. And Brian in Durham says, fishermen, surely. What a bunch of arse this government is, says Brian in Durham. Yeah, I didn't really notice that he said fishers. I would have picked him up on it, but there we are. This is, of course, Morning Glory. It's 9:35. We're here until 10. We're back after this with John Redwood.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:35. Right, this dog smuggling opens up a whole new market for the gangs. They can now advertise a pet plan. How much was the dog charged? And I hope the dog was given a life jacket, says Derek. That's, of course, the dog that's on page 1 of The Sun today, barking mad. A German Shepherd dog, which has been brought across the channel by a legal migrant, is now being housed in quarantine in a kennel down in southeast Kent somewhere. And, of course, we're paying for it. One show here from John in Nottingham says, great show, Mike. Whilst the French boats have open access to our seas, is it in the deal that the French boats can pick the immigrants up and take them back with him? Well, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it, if the French fishermen were actually able to do that? Who the hell is letting the Chancellor know how much money I have in my savings account that I have already paid tax on, says Stephen in London. That's the story that's on the front page of the Telegraph, in which it says that Angela Rayner would rather like to come after your savings, if you don't mind terribly, because you haven't paid enough tax, and if you manage to be sensible enough to save some money, then she wants some of it. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Sir John Redwood, former Government Minister, of course, to get his take on where we are at this particular moment in time. Sir John, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I've just spoken to Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary, who's assured me that he realises that things are a bit rough at the moment, but it will soon show signs of improving because of all the growth that they're building into the economy. I have to say I was slightly less than convinced by that argument.
Well, indeed, you're right to be very cynical about that. They're deindustrialising at pace. We've seen inflation soaring. Even the Bank of England saw that coming and warned us that would happen. Part of that is the higher regulated energy bills. Part of it is the increased taxes flowing through the system, as you've just heard from your very good farming interview. Part of it is council tax. Part of it is managed water bills. It's mainly government-induced, this inflation. And where is the growth going to come from? They had this ridiculous idea that giving a whole load of things away to the EU and putting us back under EU rules is going to grow us faster, when it's linking us to a part of the world that is growing the slowest of all the advanced countries, mainly because it has very dear energy and very difficult regulations.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And people who said to me over years, you know, the thing about Brexit is that it meant that we lost loads of exports to Europe. But I'm told by people who know more about it than I do that actually the reason why there were fewer exports going from here to Europe is nothing to do with Brexit, but it's everything to do with the slow economies of Europe, which are not spending as much money as they used to.
Well, that's right. And it's also to do with the fact that the government is stopping us getting out oil and gas, which used to be one of our big exports. It's stopping us doing oil refining with a big refinery closure, and we used to sell a lot of oil product. And of course, it wants to ban all of the petrol and diesel cars that we have been selling into Europe. And we don't seem to be very good at getting the investment in the replacements. But despite all that, our overall exports are up with Europe over the Brexit period. And we get all these fibs that we're losing growth because of it. Not at all. And the service exports have been on a tear, both with Europe and with the rest of the world. As when we were in the EU in the later years, our exports have been growing faster with the rest of the world. And they are being unleashed because we've now done the Trans-Pacific trade deal, the Indian trade deal, and we're trying to patch up position in America after the high tariffs imposed there. We wouldn't have been able to do any of that if we'd still been in the EU.
Right. And of course, people do worry, and I'm one of them, that this EU deal which Starmer has done, which on the face of it looks like a sort of rejoining to me and by any other name. But it also seems to leave room for further sort of encroachment, if you like. It almost seems as though this is like a gateway for Keir Starmer to move ever closer as time goes on. And in fact, he's being urged to do that by some of his backbenchers.
Well, it's disastrous because Keir Starmer has given away things that we shouldn't have given away, but he hasn't secured any of the rather paltry benefits he thought he'd be getting back. He hasn't secured the end of the queues this summer in the continental airports, and the EU doesn't have the power to put in all these new gates that they say they would need. Meanwhile, we've given away about £12 billion worth of fish over the extended period, about £1 billion worth a year, which is our fish, which we should have been taking back and earning money from. And meanwhile, he's offered to pay a contribution to join their dreadful carbon mechanism and emission trading schemes and to put ourselves under their electricity market. This would mean dearer energy. And the EU is just about to introduce a scheme which will literally mean dearer household energy and dearer petrol at the pumps, because they're going to charge extra taxes on individuals buying gas through their households and extra taxes on the petrol at the pump.
Yeah. And Keir Starmer refused yesterday several times in Parliament to give a figure as to how much money we're actually going to be giving to the EU as well.
Well, indeed, and he doesn't seem to know, because that apparently is still open for negotiation, but he's agreed the principle. So he's agreed to pay to belong to their food regulation scheme, and he's probably going to pay to try and have access to contracts in their defence scheme, and he will have to pay if he joins a new student scheme, and then a lot of that money will go to continental students, whereas at the moment, our student support rightly goes to British students. But probably worst of all, and something you and your colleagues highlighted magnificently, is the migration issues.
Yes.
And this youth movement scheme, which the Europeans want, it is backdoor freedom of movement again. Yeah. That's what they want. And they want it to be for very long stays. And then how are you going to send people home when they've got bedded down here with a job and a home?
Yeah.
And how is the British government going to provide all those extra flats, subsidised housing, all those extra jobs at a time when vacancies are falling and when we need those jobs for the unemployed in Britain?
Yeah. Yes, and clearly they're also going to bring in people from India. I mean, I put this to Steve Reed, and he said, "Oh, but it's only going to be a temporary basis." Well, we know what happens when you invite people into Britain on a temporary basis. It ends up becoming a permanent basis. You know, the idea that people are going to come here, set up home, have their families with them, and work for 3 years, and then suddenly decide they're going to go home. It's just not going to happen, is it?
Well, that is the danger, and I think it's a danger for many, many more, hundreds of thousands of people under any kind of European mobility scheme, because there may be 100 million or more people on the continent who will be eligible for the kind of scheme the Europeans have in mind. And so what this country is going to be doing is it's going to be pushing out a limited number of rich people with ultra high taxes, and those are the people who are making a big contribution in tax revenue to the country. So we might end up getting less tax from the rich, and inviting in a lot of low income and no income younger people who we have to subsidise and help them find housing. It's not going to work. It's going to make Rachel Reeves' sums even more impossible.
Yeah, quite. And finally, I mean, they keep telling us that jobs are going to come. We've sort of covered that, but prices are going to go down. I don't see how prices of anything, particularly food, coming from the EU, is going to come down as a result of this deal.
Well, no, I mean, the food deal is to ban us from buying cheaper food from non-EU sources.
Right.
And so that they want us to buy dear Irish beef rather than buying cheaper beef from the Americas or from Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. And same with dairy products. It's a protectionist scheme, and it will obviously drive prices higher. And we see that with the inflation today. So I don't see relief for the supermarkets. On petrol and diesel, they're going to put the taxes up if they join this full European scheme. We may be lucky. The world price of oil might go down a bit more, and it's been falling a bit, which is helpful. But as the bulk of what we pay at the pump is government tax, if they put this extra tax on, we're going to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like all the way from here to eternity at the moment, I'm afraid. Just more tax, more expense, more inflation, more misery, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm afraid so. And then you see there's this war going on at the top of the government between the Chancellor and the Deputy Prime Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister thinking you really can get more money out of the better off, and not seeing that over 10,000 millionaires left last year, and it could be more this year if they decide to hit them again, because they're already paying, quite rightly, the biggest share of the tax.
Yes, exactly right. So, John, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed to John Redwood, former government minister there, talking a great deal of sense about what actually is going to happen over the next weeks and months, and that is more taxes, more expense, more, people coming in to do jobs that perhaps British people could be doing, and much more of the same misery that's been created since July. Mike says, Mark in West Sussex, Mike, I suggest that two-tier may be looking to the EU for future employment, or possibly the ECHR. One from Paul, dad's side from Grimsby. He said, I worked briefly recently at a government maritime organisation. They used the word fishers because there are females on the boats now. However, they then told me that the women on the boats actually prefer to be called fishermen. Yeah. Richard says this, strange fact, we just travelled to Venice and used electronic gates. No queue. Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, this whole electronic gates thing is all a bit of a nonsense, because many people know that if you go abroad, if you go particularly to certain parts of Europe, you will be able to use them, or you won't. It doesn't really matter, and it doesn't really it doesn't really speed things up or not. Russ from Blackburn says, I'm sick to death of these so-called politicians. How long will it take for the British public to stand up to these elite, lying globalists? And one here from Sandy who says, Mike, two things. They're having to take more money from taxpayers as we are now giving billions to the EU for nothing. Secondly, how good are the Home Office at looking at visas from overseas people? They have admitted in the past it's difficult. So again, trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Let's get a voice note from Sally.
This country is being sucked dry. Ordinary people are being sucked dry. Our country is heading for oblivion, but the worm will turn. Sally, Lincolnshire.
Sally, thank you. Poppy in Staffordshire says, I took early retirement in March this year. I drive a diesel car, I use a gas boiler, I pay for everything in cash, I cancelled direct debits, I eat meat, grow my own veg, I've left society and I refuse to comply. It's going to be tight, but I will feel better. Well, good for you. Absolutely right. 9:46.
Yeah, another sign of this sort of epidemic of shoplifting across the country. Remember, in England and Wales last year, there were 516,000 offences reported to police. So that doesn't include all the shop theft crimes that go unreported. 516,000, that was up 20% in a year. And what Greggs has done, because it's so concerned about this problem, is that it's ditching self-service fridges. So, you know, those fridges that you just
literally you open the fridge, you take the sandwich.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:48. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. About 10 more minutes to go. Gary says this: Mike, that people trafficker who has been jailed for 25 years was arrested in 2023 and has been behind bars ever since, awaiting trial. So his gang was smashed something like 2 years ago. Yet the number of people being trafficked into this country has soared in the meantime. So what should they tell Starmer about his policy of stopping the boats by smashing the gangs? It should tell him what the rest of us already know, and that is that you can't stop migrants coming across the channel by playing whack-a-mole with the people traffickers. Well, exactly right. They're now bringing dogs over as well, by the way, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Let's get a voice note from Dan.
Morning, Mike. It's Dan from Kent. Great to hear from Steve Reid this morning that this Labour government is stopping the water companies from making large profits but continue to pollute our waterways. I now know why my water bill has doubled. I'm paying for the clean-up. Great show.
Yeah, good one, Dan. That's the trouble. I mean, no matter what happens with the water, whether it's leaking into the ground, whether there's a drought, whether there's too much rain, whether there's sewage, whether there's pollution, they just hand the reins over to you and charge you another 35 quid a month. It's absolutely ridiculous. Incredible. Let's talk to Alex Crook now, the chief football correspondent at Talk Sport, because, of course, he is going to be part of the team bringing you tonight the big game, which is, of course, the all-British Europa League final, Manchester United versus Tottenham. There's already a big spread about it in the Sun. It's all going on in Bilbao. Dean Scoggins is there for them. Dave Courtney is there. It's all kicking off. Very good morning to you. Alex, how you doing?
Yeah, good morning. Very well. Welcome to sunny Bilbao. Absolutely beautiful day here. I guess the calm before tonight's storm in many ways.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, you did the right thing going to Bilbao, because the heavens just opened here and it's the start of sort of bank holiday weekend already, I suppose. It's already raining, but it looks like a pretty good party atmosphere over there.
It does. I've been mingling a lot with Tottenham and Manchester United fans over the past 48 hours since we arrived here via Dusseldorf, actually, on Monday night. And I've got to say, there's been some good-natured banter, both sets of supporters enjoying the local hospitality. And at the moment, all getting along very well. But, of course, as we get nearer kick-off, those nerves and that tension will inevitably set in. Two teams who've absolutely stunk the place out when it comes to the Premier League, 16th and 17th respectively.
Yeah.
But they find themselves with a chance to win a European trophy. Tottenham with the opportunity to put a trophy in their cabinet for the first time since 2008. And, of course, there's a place in the Champions League for the winners as well.
Yeah, well, of course, people used to say, you know, poor Harry Kane, you know, he plays for Tottenham, he's never going to win a trophy. He's now finally won one with Bayern Munich, but I wonder if he'll be down there watching it. But Man United, I mean, it's hard to believe how terrible they have become, isn't it?
It is. If you look at their decline since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, I don't think anybody expected it to be quite as steep as it is. Having said that, this will be their 9th final in 10 years. They have the opportunity to pick up a 3rd successive trophy in as many seasons. So, you know, there are supporters of some clubs who would bite off your hand for that kind of success. But, yeah, they're clearly not the force they once were. And I think actually winning this final is arguably more important for United in terms of that Champions League place and the £100 million windfall that comes with it, because they're in major need of surgery in terms of transfers this summer.
Yeah, and in terms of both managers are sort of under pressure in different ways. I mean, does a win for either of them secure those managers still for the next season?
Well, it was interesting being in both press conferences yesterday. Ruben Amorim very relaxed about his future. He was asked, actually, by one of my colleagues, why aren't you under the same scrutiny and pressure that Ange Postecoglou is? And the United captain, Bruno Fernandes, was sat to his right, and he said he is. And Amorim joked back and said he wants my job. But there's no suggestion that this is make or break for his job prospects. I think in terms of Postecoglou, who came out fighting in the press conference, he said, don't worry about my future. You know, I've got a lovely life. I'll go and win trophies somewhere else if I need to.
Yeah.
I think he knows, win or lose tonight, his Tottenham tenure is over. I think they're going to replace him either way.
Yeah, he wasn't too happy with the guy from the Standard, was he, calling him a clown? He got quite worked up about that.
He did, and I understand, you know, that is obviously very derogatory language, but another big part of me thinks, is that really the thing that the Tottenham manager should be worrying about 24 hours before they play a final?
Yeah. So what's your prediction for the game then? Do you think it will be an entertaining listen, an entertaining watch?
I think it's either going to be a barnstorming 4-3 win for either team, or it'll be absolutely terrible and one of them will win one on penalties. Honestly, I don't know how to call this, and that's the response I'm getting whenever I ask anybody. I was on breakfast on talkSPORT with Ali McCoy's this morning. I said, who's going to win? He said Tottenham, but, you know, I don't say that with any great conviction. Other people think United, with their record in finals, will get the job done. I think it will come down to which set of players handle the nerves and the occasion better. I went to the stadium last night. It is a huge bowl with very steep stands. Yeah. The atmosphere is going to be intense.
So it'll be really, really loud. It's all kicking off on talkSPORT later on.
It is indeed, yeah. I think our build-up starts from 7, and I'm going to be speaking to various legends from both clubs throughout the day, so stay tuned to talkSPORT for all the build-up.
Brilliant stuff. Alex Crook, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Got this from Elsa, who says, good morning, Mike. I live in Italy, and I'm amazed at the low prices in UK supermarkets. Brits should look at our food prices, €3 or more for a packet of butter. Well, I think you'd find that's a lot cheaper than what we pay, and 3-ish for half a dozen eggs. Good luck with your prices importing from the EU. My shopping bill has doubled since COVID. The Great Reset? Well, it's interesting you say that, because, I mean, I think that a lot of people might remember what things used to cost in this country, particularly if you haven't been here for a while. But over the last, I would say, 6 to 8 months, certainly, the prices have just gone through the roof. And you can never know precisely how much anything's going to cost, because it always seems to go up. Unless it's on our special offer, you go into any shop to buy something, and it inevitably costs another £1 more than it used to. Dave in South Gloucestershire says this: we need to see the safeguards, if any, on this free movement of 35-year-old youths. For instance, are these people going to be those born in their country of origin or have lived there for a long time? How are we going to prevent asylum seekers given fast-track citizenships joining this scheme? Will we stipulate that asylum claims will not be accepted from these youths? Confirmation that dependents will not be allowed to come with their youths as well? Well, all of those questions are all very good questions, Dave. And unfortunately, the Labour government hasn't got any answers for us. All they will say is that, there'll be a cap on it, and it will be mostly people in their 20s. Well, how do they know that? They literally don't know that. Let's talk to Mike, who's in Peterborough. Hello, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
Morning, sir. What can I do for you?
Yeah. The reason for the call is this, right? Do you know how Le Pen's been stopped by an embezzlement charge from the EU?
Yes.
From going for presidency?
Yeah.
With Starmer lining himself to Europe more, is it possible, because my biggest fear is that Labour will carry on after 4 years, is it possible for the EU to interfere with our electoral programme and stop Starmer from being turfed out because they, on a technicality, they find something out about reform or
they try and come after Nigel Farage or something?
Yes, that's my major concern.
Well, you wouldn't put it past them, would you? I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't know is a straight answer to that, because I don't know what jurisdiction they would have or could have, and hopefully 4 years down the road from now, they would be talking about something that might have happened a very long time ago that they were trying to allege, you know?
Yeah, it's just, we do live in a bonkers society, you know, we actually, I mean, the fishermen, I can't believe they've just written off our fishing industry.
Yeah, I know
you've had very intelligent people today have come and said to you that we're basically giving away £1 billion worth of fish a year, and we could be making money there. We should be running the country like a shop.
Yeah.
You know, what you sell, you get, you know, and all. Why can't they work it out?
We are running the country like a shop, but the shop doesn't have any security. The door's open all the time. People wander in and take whatever they want, don't pay for it. That's the shop we're running.
Yes. How do we? Surely they must have a mega mind behind them telling them that that's how a country should work like a shop. You know, you sell stuff and you get, you know, and the more you make, the better off you are.
Well, you would think so. You would think a lot of this stuff is straightforward and obvious, but they seem to be completely and utterly unaware of how to make that sort of thing happen. Mike, I appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. A couple of voice notes for you. Here's one from Mike on Starmer.
Hello, Mike. Great show as always. Robin Starbridge here. Mike, can you hear that? That's the cheer of all the poor people, mate, who can't believe they can get quicker through the E-gates at airports. Woohoo!
Yes.
This government are disgusting.
I mean, that is ridiculous. We just had a message to say from somebody who just landed in Venice and went through an E-gate. No problem at all. But most of them won't be ready until next year, if at all. And it doesn't really matter anyway. Ian in Cheshire says energy bills are going to go down anyway. It's getting warmer, for God's sake. These people think we are complete idiots. Well, of course. We're still waiting for the £300 that we were going to get back, weren't we, from Ed Miliband? I haven't got that yet. Keith in Durham says Starmer should be called Fagin. Instead of putting more money in our pockets, he's picking our pockets instead. Absolutely right. Putting more money in the pockets of working people. He still says it, but he's not doing it. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here.
Morning.
Very good morning.
That e-gate thing is still irritating. But
Yeah.
I rant on about this every day.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping us using e-gates, which is why some countries let us do it anyway, and some still won't let us do it. It's just a punishment beating from some countries for leaving the EU.
And and we're reading this morning that even those countries that might have to change their policy on it won't probably do it till next year.
No, also then, by the way, we still have to do that fingerprinting and all that stuff. And the thing is, unless we had biometric ID, and well, wouldn't it be then easier just to bring in, digital ID cards here? Honestly, this is the way we're going to be back in the EU. We're going to have Tony Blair's dream of digital ID cards. Oh, don't worry, though. Boris Johnson's reckons we're living in a police state. I don't think he remembers when he was Prime Minister, because I remember being locked in my home 23 hours a day.
That's true.
I remember his government monitoring what I did and what I said and what scientists and
being
MPs
told
did.
where you could go and what you could eat there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, completely forgotten all the period of time he was in office, but he's saying that about the Lucy Connolly case. Oh, yeah, inflation up. Angela Rayner wants us to be taxed more.
Yeah.
It's a lovely day. Weather's
weather's
gorgeous.
turned.
Global warming's failing us